I need it. I need it. Let's go.
Thank God it's Friday.
The guy. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola with you guys today. So for the Young Turks, huge show ahead because is the war over or are we going to do another surprise attack literally tomorrow? So we'll see, we'll have that discussion, very important. JD Vance pretending to be anti-war, but going to collect money from pro-Israel donors, which means that he 1000% backs Israel. So we'll get to that story in a little bit. So many others. Afterwards, during the revolution, we've got an amazing video again from Brave New Film showing you all the destruction that Israel has done in Gaza, Lebanon, and Iran. And House of Payne is here. Joel Payne, I'm kidding. It's Joel Payne from Move On. But there's doing something very important in challenging Democratic incumbents, which I love. That'll be at 8 o'clock. And then after that, Meta World Peace is in the studio. So just when you thought things couldn't get wilder, Ron Artest is going to stop by and tell us what he thinks of politics these days, and maybe a little bit of sports. All right, so John, let's get started.
That's exciting. It's the person second most in the world who loves world peace after Donald Trump.
Exactly. You know what? I'll ask him about that. All right. Yeah. Well, what do we got, John?
Okay. Well, we've got dramatic news. Let's jump into it. Iran has announced that their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is over, at least for now. Maybe forever, maybe it'll be back on by the weekend, we're not sure. But the stock market is very excited, the oil markets around the world are very excited. And President Donald Trump is saying that beyond just that, we also will be retrieving Iran's enriched uranium, maybe in exchange for money, maybe not in exchange for money. There's a lot of lack of clarity about some of the details here, but we're going to talk about it. But notice that I said that Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is over. Ours apparently is not. We are still blockading Iranian ships and ships affiliated with the Iranian regime from going through the Strait of Hormuz. And so we're going to have all the details and the very significant points of non-agreement that remain. But Cenk, first, what are your 2 cents?
So there are facts in this case that make you believe that maybe the war is close to over. And then there are also facts in this situation that makes you think, oh no, we're gonna do a surprise attack tomorrow. So which one is it? Well, let John give you the facts and then we'll talk it through, because which one it is it just couldn't be more important. Because if we go back to attacking them, it'll be a debacle of epic proportions. And I've got it at 50-50, so let's talk it through.
Yeah, it's so funny because every development I've said feels like it's just a pretext for us to launch an invasion or something. This is the first time I wasn't going to predict that. And meanwhile, Cenk is pretty confident. So we'll get into the evidence. So let's talk about what the different parties to this kind of ceasefire / truce are claiming. And we're also going to give you updates on what appears to actually be happening on the ground. So first of all, Iran did announce this morning in response to Donald Trump posting on Truth Social that they will lift their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz for the remainder of the ceasefire. It had already sort of been a part of the ceasefire that the blockade was going to be lifted, but in reality, it really hadn't been. So supposedly now it's double plus verified that it's going to be lifted for right now. But the ships are going to have to take a coordinated route that Iran agrees to. And I've seen maps of how that route compares to the status quo before the war was started. And it is a longer journey through the Strait of Hormuz that sort of cuts between 2 Iranian islands rather than using like the vast bulk of the strait. I don't know why exactly that is or what that means going forward, but it is a change, so bear that in mind. Trump has also stated that Iran either already has or will be removing the mines from the Strait of Hormuz. And if I was the captain of an oil tanker, I would want to know which of those two it was before I started going through, because I feel like it's one or the other, and they're not the same vis-a-vis hull integrity. But anyway, so that's good news. We agree on some stuff. The blockade mostly is gone, although our blockade is continuing. So that's good. Bad news though, the IRGC does not seem to be happy about this. So they are not the ones that negotiated this. It's the non-Revolutionary Guard Iranian leadership. But the IRGC said that it would decide which vessels are allowed to cross the Strait of Hormuz, despite Iranian government pledges that their waterway has been unblocked, in a sign that the regime is currently divided, or that we don't know for sure who will have power coming out of this. And the issue with that is that they're the ones with the rockets and drones and stuff. So I feel like their input matters. Now, Trump has also claimed that not only is the status quo changed, that now ships can go through, but that Iran has agreed to never close the strait down again, which he has said, and I have not seen any indication that Iran has ever agreed to that, let alone the IRGC. And importantly, CNN is reporting like an hour before we're going live that ships are not moving through the Strait of Hormuz as of right now. And bear in mind that Iran has threatened to retaliate if the blockade that the United States is keeping on them were to be continued. And one of the best ways they could do that would be to close down from their end the Strait of Hormuz. But don't worry, Cenk, Trump is saying that they've agreed to never do that again. So why don't we cover the Strait stuff, and then we'll get to the nuclear material after that. But what do you make of the situation with the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, so there's two different realities out there now. One is the mainstream media reality where they say the war is almost over, we believe Donald Trump. And by the way, it's not crazy to say that. If they were totally wrong, I'd just tell you, I'm not shy about criticizing mainstream media. But Iran did say they were opening up the Strait of Hormuz, so there is reason for optimism. So yes, I'm not totally dismissing that world at all. But part of that world, John, is, and we've basically won. They're going to end their enrichment program. They're going to open up the Strait of Hormuz. They're basically going to give us what we want. And then there's a second reality out there in this multiverse that we live in. And that one is, no, Iran has definitely largely won this war. So we've conceded behind the scenes and Trump is just doing bluster, right? There's actually a third reality, which is none of that is true. Both sides are restocking as we speak, and re-engaging in the war is imminent, okay? So things are too complicated and nuanced right now for me to tell you, I know which world we live in, okay? So, and that's partly our job, but this is a very rare situation where it's muddled enough that it is not crystal clear. Normally everything's crystal clear. Who has more money, they win. Israel gets their way 100% of the time. We move on, we're right about it like literally every time because it's not complicated. This is complicated. So now my best sense is, I'll tell you what is not possible and what is. So Donald Trump saying that Iran has basically surrendered and they're gonna give up their entire enrichment program and they're gonna reopen the Strait of Hormuz and there's gonna be no toll and we get to block them anytime we want. That is definitely not true. Iran had the advantage. Like no matter what you think, if you think that Iran did not have the advantage before the ceasefire, you're living in la la land. It doesn't matter how many of their ships or planes or buildings we destroy, they have economic leverage through the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. So, and you can't take that leverage away. We've tried 1,000 times. Doesn't mean that Iran won the war 100%, but they, like as an outside objective observer, they're winning 65, 70%. In that ballpark. So it makes no sense for the side that's winning and has more leverage to go, I surrender here, I'll give you everything you want. That doesn't make any sense. So that is not true. That is definitely not true. So that only leaves me two options, John. One is Trump's going, oh, we got everything, surrender, but in reality, we realize we lost and the oil markets and the stock market can't take this anymore. So we say, oh yeah, give us some enriched uranium out of the country, but mainly keep your program and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, don't charge a toll, and we're gone. And we'll give you a guarantee, we're not gonna attack you. We can't give a guarantee with the lunatics in Israel, but we'll do our best and we'll leave you guys alone. That's a possibility because then That's a deal Iran could live with, and then Trump thinks he'll just lie his way out of it and go, I won, you took the risk for anyone, I won. Okay, so good. I hope that's I prefer that route because I don't mind Trump lying as long as the war is over, nobody else gets killed and we come home. The third possibility is, I'm so clever. I told him we had another ceasefire, but then this weekend I'm gonna attack them after the markets close. That is definitely possible. So which one is it between the last two? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because it really does feel like every time there's big talks coming, other than the Vance one, that's just a pretext for an attack. And so it could happen. That said, I have predicted, the invasion of Carg Island and stuff before, and it hasn't happened. So I don't know. It's impossible to know.
John, before you go on, let me just add to that, right? So I predicted ground troops. So if they don't do the ground troops and they get to a peace deal, I'm thrilled to be wrong, thrilled, right? So two more factors that are important here. I see online people who know military affairs, et cetera, and you don't know how much to trust them. They say every report they're getting from our troops is they're mobilizing. They're not standing still, they're not going backwards, they're mobilizing, right? So that's obviously super relevant. On the other hand, why the hell would the Iranians agree to open up the Strait of Hormuz if it's all a lie? Unless they got duped again. So, or unless they're restocking and there's reports out that they're buying extra drones and missiles from China as we speak. So just more information, but still gets to a stalemate on which of the two options it is.
Yeah, but again, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump in the last 48 hours said that China had agreed not to supply arms to Iran.
No.
And that's the only place I've seen that information is from his social media, not from,
no, he's
from
totally
China. So
lying
again,
about that.
there's no reason to trust any of this. But you've mentioned the nuclear program, so let's talk about that. Now, Donald Trump said that Iran has agreed to suspend its nuclear program indefinitely and will not receive any frozen funds from the US, which is an interesting thing for him to just come out and say as like the first information we would get about this. Like, what do you mean they're not gonna receive any you're just announcing this. Why would they be receiving frozen funds? Well, that's because Axios has a scoop that they're discussing a deal wherein they would get $20 billion in frozen funds unfrozen. So I feel like Donald Trump is just coming out and just lying because that would be a very difficult thing to have the right acknowledge he's doing. It might be a very reasonable way. I mean, Jake, you can agree or disagree in exchange for the nuclear material, but that is also a thing that he and the right have attacked the Obama administration for a decade plus, because that was a part of the Obama nuclear deal, was returning some of their money to them in exchange for more influence over their nuclear program. And what do you know, after all of this, we might end up doing the same thing, but he's denying it. And so is he telling the truth? Is Axios lying, or was their source lying? Who's to say? But he's saying, we're gonna get it together. We're gonna go in with Iran at a nice leisurely pace and go back and start excavating with big machinery. We'll bring it back to the United States. And so they say in Iran that there's been no deal on the nuclear issues. But again, it is hard to imagine that they're agreeing. They're getting nothing according to Trump, no money. They're agreeing to never again pursue this, to give up what they already have. Yeah, maybe Jake, maybe they're as desperate as Donald Trump would have us believe that they are, but that didn't feel the way it was going based on the situation on the ground.
Again, there's things we know and don't know. So the thing we do know is, no, Iran is not desperate. Iran is not going to do a deal where they give up their entire enrichment program. They open up the strait. They don't get any money. They don't get any sanctions relief. Bessent is saying, no, we're gonna keep the sanctions on Iran. So Iran, if Bessent and Trump are correct, would literally get nothing, nothing. Why would they agree? No, that's definitely not true. There's no chance they're gonna agree to that, right? But the lie could be as cover for Trump politically at home. So he gives them $20 billion in frozen funds. He does sanctions relief. We do a fig leaf on taking out the enriched uranium. We take out a little bit, but don't end their program. That's a deal that can get done. And that's a deal where the Iranians could get excited enough to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And then Trump just tries to lie his way out afterwards to cover his ass politically and say, I won, everything else is fake news. Okay, no problem. And that still fits this same exact pattern. But it's also possible that Trump is saying, all that stuff to the Iranians and thinking, moving in the ground troops as we speak. Don't worry, Bibi, I got this. That also fits the pattern. So buckle up and brace for impact this weekend, or maybe no impact.
It's really hard to say because the market stuff, the polling stuff has been really bad for them. So he should be feeling a lot of pressure to wind this thing down. But also, is he going to give up an opportunity to, have oil prices go up and down a few more times? Him and Barron Trump can make a few more $1 billion off of sleazy, corrupt bets. I don't know. I don't know why he'd give up that power. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, look, there's reports out again, and some say it's Barron Trump. I don't know. I can't. I'm not a sleuth enough in the markets to be able to tell if Barron Trump is doing those trades or not. But a lot of folks are saying, "Oh, you guys are such suckers." They know that once they say that there's a deal and the Strait is open, oil prices are going to plummet, market's going to go up. You can easily make those bets and make a ton of money. And there is one account that has definitely done that throughout this entire war. Is it Barron's account is the question, and we don't know whose account it is, but obviously someone's got inside information, they're playing the markets. Now, here's the second thing I wanted to add to that, John, which is that the markets are not markets are important after the fact. So if the war continues, the markets will crash, and then that will create leverage for Iran. So they're enormously important in that way. But as a barometer of what's going to happen, I know I can't use the R word, but the Wall Street knows nothing. They're total morons. They believe everything Trump says. And I can't believe how stupid they are. So I wouldn't trust the markets as a predictor of anything at all.
Yeah. Well, I will just say that maybe this is, I don't know, radical or whatever, but when there is finally some sort of responsible governance, I want to see a concerted effort with massive resources and funding to go in there, get whatever information you need out of financial brokerage firms, the prediction markets, and track down all of the people inside of the White House who have been obviously transparently doing insider trading. And we need these people locked up. I mean, we know it is dozens of people that have been doing this. And so I would love to see that locked down, because if you don't, then this is the new normal. Democrat, Republican president, it doesn't matter. They're going to manipulate the stock market. They're going to manipulate the betting markets to personally enrich themselves at a far faster rate than even their prior insane levels of corruption allowed them to. Nancy Pelosi is going to look like a reasonable investor compared to what will be allowed if there are not people thrown in prison for what we've been witnessing in the last year plus.
Yeah, John, super last thing from me on this. If you force me to go one direction or another, because I said in the beginning 50-50, I'd go 52-48 that all of this is a mirage. It's all a lie, and we're gonna reattack them. And so what's the thing that's tipping me over by a little bit in that direction? So actually, I had a third absurd thing, but the two were Trump in the Maria Bartiromo interview. Saying, look, oil prices could even go higher during the midterms, but the midterms are so far away. They're in November. So if Trump thought the war was going to be over in a couple of days, why would he be talking about maybe higher oil prices in the midterms? So that's a tell right there. Number two, if the war was going to be over, then that means they're not listening to Israel. And JD Vance is, as we're going to show later in the show, going and doing the Israel First Circuit and kissing every Israeli ass there is. So that's saying, hey, give us money, don't worry, we're still gonna do every war you want. Actually, the more I talk, the more I make it 55-45 that we're likely to attack. And then the final third one that's absurd is, this feels like the polls that Kamala Harris is gonna win Indiana right before the election. Like, my spidey sense is like, don't believe anything you're hearing now. It's a false, hope right before things turn into a debacle. So I'll land at 55-45. This isn't real.
I mean, one thing to consider is one reason Donald Trump might say that oil prices are still going to be super high come the midterms is to give a signal that the war is going to continue, to in the short term escalate oil prices, knowing that he's about to get a deal, so that he can then bet that the oil prices are going to drop and make more money off of that drop. I don't know. We should not have to worry about this from our government officials, but I think that we very reasonably do. But regardless, the Strait is not the only matter at hand. Today, Donald Trump declared that Israel's military campaign in Lebanon is over. That was evidently news to the Israelis because they do not seem to agree. But here's what Donald Trump wrote this morning on Truth Social. Israel will not be bombing Lebanon any longer. They are prohibited from doing so by the USA. Enough is enough. Showing that Donald Trump, he's not being ordered around by Bibi Netanyahu. He tells Bibi what the deal is. But here's the issue. Minutes before that post, Benjamin Netanyahu uploaded a video address declaring that Israel was not done yet with Hezbollah. And one would think that if they had agreed to this, they would have agreed to it at least several minutes before Donald Trump posted on Truth Social about it. And by the way, less than an hour after that announcement, an Israeli drone strike reportedly killed at least one person in southern Lebanon. Now, maybe that's just, you know, a couple of freebie kills you get right on the edge of the ceasefire or whatever. Or maybe it's the standard thing that Israeli ceasefires are worth, which is it cuts the killing by 50 to 70%, but never truly ends it. Or maybe it's Benjamin Netanyahu sending a signal, no, you don't tell me what to do. You can say whatever you want. I'm gonna keep bombing if I want to. I don't know. But anyway, and bear in mind, in terms of that conflict, Israel is going to say they have to be involved in Lebanon because of the ongoing threat from Hezbollah. Well, Trump is saying that Iran has agreed to stop supporting both Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, again, as of right now, it's just him saying that, not Iran saying that, but he is at least saying that. Anyway, Netanyahu is saying that Israel has agreed to a temporary ceasefire at the request of Trump, and that has given Israel the opportunity to promote a combined political and military solution with the Lebanese government, which he described as one hand holding a weapon while the other is extended in peace. I would check that other one carefully. I have a feeling there is a smaller weapon held in that one too, but that's just me, reading the last couple of years of recent experience in the region. And also bear in mind, Israel is saying that any of the land that they have seized, they will be retaining control of, which I think you use the term conquering historically when that's what you've done, but usually the news phrases it differently in this case for some reason. And so, look, if the ceasefire is maintained, then hypothetically Benjamin Netanyahu is going to experience a little bit of pushback from, the most warmongering parts of his party. And that's going to be a good reason that he's not necessarily going to want to seem to be going along with it. And again, Cenk, remember that there is a big disagreement between Donald Trump and Iran about whether this is tied in with the ceasefire between the US and Iran, where they clearly think that this is an integral part of that deal. But Trump repeatedly, Truth Social posted this morning that Lebanon's not tied to the situation with the Strait of Hormuz, which we've heard that before. And so that means that hypothetically, Benjamin Netanyahu still has the ability, if he wants, bomb Lebanon a little bit, blow up the entire ceasefire and continue the war that he doesn't want to come to an end anyway. And so I would love for them to stop bombing Lebanon. I would love for them to stop murdering civilians and kids. But I don't know that I necessarily trust that that's going to happen. What do you think?
Yeah, so this one's easier to discern than whether Iran and America are going to come to a peace deal. So this ceasefire has 0% chance of holding. So Israel's gone and taken southern Lebanon. Hezbollah is never going to accept that. And so they did a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon at first. And I'm like, yeah, the relevant party's not involved, Hezbollah. The Lebanese government doesn't like Hezbollah. They also are against Hezbollah. So it's like, and it's complicated because it's not like Lebanon is then friends and allies with Israel. Like if the Lebanese leader goes as far as just taking a call from Netanyahu, pundits and others in the country have written, that's it. He'll never win another election. That's how toxic and hated Netanyahu is in Lebanon. Now, having said that, without Hezbollah agreeing to it, it was useless. But then in a weird twist that made things a little, surprising, Hezbollah then agreed to the ceasefire. Of course, Israel violated it, but that's just normal. Like they violate every ceasefire. And you could call it fog of war, you could call it one last shot, but they'll take 8 more shots during the so-called ceasefire, right? So those things are not in dispute. So now then the real question is what's going to happen next? Well, Israel says they're not leaving and southern Lebanon is now theirs. Now you're not gonna see that in American media because American media is still pretending that Israel's the victim. I mean, it's just so comical. It's now getting to North Korea levels, right, of propaganda. Okay, so if Israel says they're not leaving, It's not like Hezbollah is gonna be like, oh, that's cool, keep southern Lebanon. No, that war will rage and rage and rage. And will Iran back Hezbollah? Yes, they will back Hezbollah. So that means the Iran-Israel part of the war is definitely not over, which then now makes me go back to our first story, John, and go, well, if Israel's not going to end the war with Iran, I mean, that means we're not going to end the war with Iran. But hey, prove me wrong, American politicians. If Donald Trump actually defies Israel, that would be the most shocking thing that's happened in a long time. And I'll give him credit for that, as I mean, I know it's partly putting out a quarter of a fire that he started. I got all that. But nevertheless, any US president that doesn't listen to Israel would be so shocking that it would definitely be credit worthy. But now, having said that, as I say it out loud, I mean, what percentage chance that is it that America is not 100% occupied by Israel? I got that at near zero. So that means all of this is fake and the war is going to continue.
Yeah, by the time you have your next episode of the Young Turks, we'll know a little bit. We'll know whether there was an invasion or whatever, and perhaps if the ceasefire does hold and continues to, then we can at some point do a post-mortem on this was the best case scenario that could happen right now, but we can talk about all that was lost and wasted in this stupid, totally optional, nonsensical, wasteful, deadly, stupid war of Donald Trump's that he's now berating us to give him massive credit for. But anyway, that remains to be seen, because far worse worlds could still wait us once the weekend hits. But anyway, why don't we take our first break? When we come back, we have more on the other war Donald Trump is waging against the Pope.
All right, let's go to members on TYT.com. Eclectic says, hi all, in before the Strait of Hormuz is blocked again, or am I too late? You're a little too late, because it's blocked again. Michael Zembauer says, Daddy Trump can bunk up with Sonny Boy in the hole for their crimes. Oh my God, I would love that so much. John's totally right. I mean, if they did this kind of massive insider trading and we let them get away with it, like it's gonna be even worse than before. Everybody's gonna cheat like crazy. I mean, okay, there's too many stories to cover. I mean, David Sachs is robbing the place blind. He's the all-in podcaster who's doing all these deals for AI and crypto and this BS informal advisor role. It's just, there's corruption as far as the eye can see. Drain the swamp, my ass. Bloated Ego says, don't be fooled by any shenanigans that might happen between now and the midterms. These midterms especially will tell about the gullibility and or intelligence of the voter. Now, if the war continues, there's no level of gullibility that is high enough to overcome that. No, the Republicans will get annihilated in the midterms if the war continues. All right, Israel's definitely punching air right now, Aaron Graham says, a YouTube member. Ronald Fan says, happy crazy Friday, TYT family, to you and Cenk and John. Thanks for giving me updates on the Iran war, and you and John and Cenk look handsome and smarter than Hegseth and Vance. Oh, well, thank you, Ronald. Face Scott Smith says, most of Iran doesn't even have internet right now. I don't trust this. Marianne Valdez says, did the new Lego video come out? I'll wait for that to know the truth. We have it later. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and John with you guys. Also, Augustine Vasquez, thanks for joining. They hit the join button below. We appreciate that. TYT.com/join. And you actually don't even get ads during the ad breaks. You get me reading your comments. All right, John.
Yes, so we spent the first segment talking about Donald Trump's war with Iran. Now let's turn to his religious war.
Like millions of Americans, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. I even attended a seminary in high school, studied theology, Latin, went to Mass daily. I got a lot out of it. My parents, they were devout Catholics, and while I wasn't particularly engaged at the time in the teachings of the Catholic Church, as a young person, it certainly entered my consciousness and made me a better person. Others at the Vatican have totally lost sight of the true meaning of the Bible and its teachings.
Look, it is possible that the leadership of your religion can go astray. I mean, I would say in the case of the Catholic Church, they sure seem to turn a blind eye to some disgusting behavior for decades and decades. But of all of the places for a person like Sean Hannity to claim a position of moral superiority over the Pope, it's when the Pope is inconveniently asking Trump to stop murdering kids. That is what has caused Sean Hannity to take the decades that he's been a devoted Catholic and decide, no, actually, I've got a golden calf and I really prefer it over this stupid Pope. So, Cenk, we're gonna get into all this. But first, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, look, there's the obvious, which is never listen to Republicans if they ever quote the Pope again or pretend to be pro-life or care about religion. No, the minute the Pope's against the war, they're like, no, we want blood. Okay, all right, so yeah, you're for the Prince of Peace. Sure you are. Giant liars, none of them are religious. Unless it's like they're worshiping Satan behind the scenes. I doubt it, but like that's much more likely than them being real Christians. They prove it every day how much bloodlust they have. It's the exact opposite of what Jesus said. And they prove every day, oh, give everything to the rich. Exact opposite of what Jesus said. So if there is an antichrist, Sean Hannity and Donald Trump are good candidates for them. But look, this is not just about Trump and the Republicans' attacks against the Catholic Church. After John is done giving you the facts, I want to tell you guys why I think Israel has ordered this attack on the Catholic Church. So go ahead, John.
Fascinating. Okay, well, let's jump into a little bit of what the Pope recently said, talking to a group of bishops that has so angered the right in America. So Pope Leo amplified his condemnation of America's conflict with Iran, saying that God does not bless any conflict and certainly doesn't side with those who drop bombs. And I will add, certainly not those who drop bombs on schools and kill little girls and then refuse to take any responsibility for it. Leo said there were signs of hope in a world marked by senseless and inhuman violence, especially in the lands of early Christianity that have been, quote, desecrated by the blasphemy of war and the brutality of business with no regard for people's lives. He told them that no cause can justify the spilling of innocent blood, and he urged them, quote, to proclaim clearly that God does not bless any conflict, to cry out to the world that whoever is a disciple of Christ, the Prince of Peace, never stands on the side of those who yesterday wielded the sword and today drops bombs. And so the Pope is just doing the most popey thing that you can do, saying stop murdering people for the love of God, literally. And we've killed a lot of people. We've killed at least 3,600 people in Iran, 1,701 of whom are identified as civilians, 254 of whom are children. And I just want you to imagine if Iran had killed 254 American kids in 50 years, we'd still be citing that as a reason to attack them in any way possible. But we're supposed to imagine that they won't be angry in the same way. They're not people or anything. And so anyway, the Pope has just been pointing out that you shouldn't be doing this stuff. And that really angers the right. Now notice, of course, they have no problem with religious leaders constantly like berating us about stuff. And I figured out that it's not really hypocrisy. They want the Pope to shut up because what the Pope is saying is consistent with his religion. They like the domestic political leaders constantly telling us what to do because they're saying stuff that actually has nothing to do with their religion. They're telling us to ban abortion when that's not what the Bible says at all. They're constantly talking about gay and trans people when the Bible really has no concern with that whatsoever. They're perfectly fine with fake ass religious leaders appealing to fake ass religious voters when it's really just their biases and their bigotry that's being played up. But when the Pope holds a position of actual moral clarity, that enrages them. And anyway, well, now we turn to Donald Trump and take a look.
Fighting with the Pope, and are you worried it's upsetting your?
No, I don't. I have to do what's right. The Pope has to understand that. Very simple. I have nothing against the Pope. His brother's MAGA all the way. I like his brother, Louis. I'm not fighting with him. The Pope made a statement. He says Iran can have a nuclear weapon. I say Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the Pope looked at the 42,000 people that were killed over the last 2 or 3 months as a protester with no weapons, no nothing, I mean, you take a look at that. So I can disagree with the Pope. I have a right to disagree. I have a right to disagree with the Pope.
Yeah, you have a right to disagree. That doesn't mean that literally anything you do based on that disagreement makes sense or makes you seem moral or mature or anything like that. Well, are you going to be shocked to find out that the Pope literally has never said that Iran could have a nuclear weapon? Trump feels like he can only get one up on the Pope if he lies about his position. The 42,000 protesters being killed doesn't appear to be based on anything specifically. There are references to 42,000 protesters being arrested, but not killed. And certainly the Iranian regime has killed a lot of protesters. But Donald Trump, you don't get to hide behind that as an excuse for why you're doing this war, because this war hasn't been about the protesters or regime change that would free the protesters for like 6 weeks at this point. You've given us a more hardline, more radical regime. You've guaranteed possibly decades of reprisals against anybody daring to stand up against the regime, because that's the regime you've delivered to them by killing the old guard, putting more radical, younger theocrats in charge, and also killing a bunch of their family members so they'll hate America even more than their parents did. And so none of that makes any sense, Cenk, but what do you make of it?
Yeah, so the fact that this is, against everything that Republicans have always said is obvious. We talked about this yesterday. John Kerry and Joe Biden, they said shouldn't even be Catholics anymore. They should be thrown out of the church because they are pro-choice. But now all of a sudden, conveniently, they're like, oh, Catholic doctrine, who cares? Give me more war, right? So all that's like Tuesday. And not new. That's the Republicans have been doing this a long time. So what is new is the over-the-top nature of the conflict. Normally they'd be like, oh, well, grumble with the Pope, and then they'd move on, right? But no, Trump's like, no, the Pope's wrong, Pope's stupid, Pope's low IQ, and all that stupid stuff that he says. Now, wait a minute, that's like, for Catholics, that's bordering on sacrilegious. And forget, the word sacrilegious, they are not happy when you gravely insult the Pope. Now, I'm not a religious person, so I'm like, I don't know why they care so much, but they definitely do. And that's a huge voting block, and he won 55% of that voting block before. So there is a higher power that is getting Trump to go over the top on the Pope and on Catholics overall. So John, I have a theory, okay? So my theory is that the Pope isn't just criticizing this war and saying, obviously, popes are always anti-war in our lifetimes, right? So that's normal, but he's also condemning Israel specifically. Like here, one of the graphics we have is, I think this is graphic 7. Pope condemns Israel's attack against church, calls for end to barbarity, right? And he's made comments like that. So Israel cannot stand criticism like that. And usually when someone criticizes Israel, they send their dogs in America to attack, okay? So now I'm gonna give you a couple of videos here, John, that's going to go towards what I'm saying, and then you guys can draw your own conclusion. First of all, would Israel do something that is, an insult to Christianity and the opposite of Christianity? Well, let's find out from Benjamin Netanyahu. So this is.
Also wrote The Lessons of History, very brief, 100-page book, in which he said, well, history proves that, unfortunately and unhappily, Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan. Because if you are strong enough, ruthless enough, powerful enough, evil will overcome good.
Man, that is like exactly what his belief system is. And he said it, and he said it in English. He wanted you to know. When he doesn't want you to know something, he says it in Hebrew. So he's saying, no, screw Jesus Christ. Genghis Khan is the way to go. If you want power, be ruthless and be evil. Well, thank you for the confession. Plus, that is like slapping Christians across the face. Your Jesus is totally powerless. And if I have force and power, Genghis Khan can basically steamroll, kill Jesus Christ, and win. That's his ideology. I mean, the fact that he's willing to say that when most of his funding and all of the war funding comes from a largely Christian nation. I don't mean that it's Christian in its ruling or a theocracy. I mean, we're 70% Christians in America. So, okay, all right, but that's just one thing about his general philosophy. Now, if someone crosses Israel, how does he react? Like, for example, when Spain just said, hey, no, we're not in favor of this war, so you can't use our bases, what did he say?
לא תשתוק מול מי שתוקף אותנו. ספרד הכפישה את גיבורנו, את חיילי צה"ל, חיילי הצבא המוסרי ביותר בעולם. ולכן הנחיתי היום לסלק את נציגי ספרד ממרכז התיאום בקריית גת, לאחר שספרד בחרה שוב ושוב להתייצב נגד ישראל. מי שתוקף את מדינת ישראל במקום את משטרי הטרור, מי שעושה זאת, לא יהיה שותף שלנו לגבי עתיד האזור. אני לא מוכן לסבול את הצביעות הזאת ואת העוינות הזאת. אני לא מתכוון לאפשר לאף מדינה לנהל נגדנו מלחמה מדינית בלי לשלם על כך מחיר מיידי.
So Spain is a giant country and very relevant in the European Union, very relevant in NATO, etc. So you'd think that maybe you tread a little carefully. No, he says, we're the most moral army in the world. How dare they? And he said, they will pay an immediate price. Oh, okay. So anyone who crosses Israel in any way will pay a very heavy price. Okay. Now, this is an interesting one because this one is a tell, but you have to be kind of an expert in politics to know that. But now you guys are all experts because you watch us and we show it to you. So random Republican congressman from Oklahoma gave a speech at a town hall that made me go, The background and context for this is very important. This is the week that Erdogan criticized Israel. He's the leader of Turkey. And then Israel started doing propaganda against Turkey and saying, oh, so they're occupying Cyprus. The Turkey's the real problem and the real aggressor. And then a rando congressman from Oklahoma said this in a town hall.
Turkey has a president who has made statements relative to reestablishing the Ottoman Empire. And he wants to be the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so we have to make sure that is what is happening in the Middle East, that we're not getting focused someplace and letting Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood play victim.
Now, why is that relevant? That's relevant because Israel literally gives talking points to all of their asshats in America. So that is 94% of our Congress and a number of people, not all in media, but a number of people in media. And those talking points are always the same because they come from the government of Israel. And here I'll give random slight credit, damning with faint praise to Jake Tapper. So when I see Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, they have the same exact talking points as the politicians do given to them by their handlers. Jake Tapper, on the other hand, has a natural affinity for Israel, but he doesn't have those talking points. So it's a different ballgame, and you can see it with your own eyes. So this guy, and Tom Massey has already told us, nearly every congressperson has an Israeli handler. Obviously got talking points from that handler. He doesn't know. If you asked him a second question about the Ottoman Empire, he'd be like, what? Like, it's an empire of little furniture things that you put your feet on, right? All of a sudden, he's like, they're reconstituting the Ottoman Empire. Really? The real problem is Turkey. Really? The real problem in Oklahoma is Turkey? Okay, so that gives you a sense of when Israel says jump, our politicians say how high and how absurd would you like us to be? So now there's been a trend recently where Catholics have started to speak out against Israel. And we've shown you this before, but it's a small example, but representative of what's been happening here in America. This is Carrie Prejean. She's a former beauty pageant contestant, but now actually a very relevant and moral voice in America. And she was on a panel for religious liberty that Trump put together. She then insisted on having religious liberty, and they kicked her off the panel. They're like, no, the point of the panel is to say that anybody who criticizes Israel should be locked up, okay? And she's like, what? In fact, she said this.
If somebody states if somebody says they're an anti-Zionist, they are saying about themselves that they have a double standard and hypocrisy, and they're taking anti-Semitic positions.
Okay, Carrie, do you feel like you have your questions in?
I don't agree with that because as a Catholic, I don't agree that the new modern state of Israel has any biblical prophecy meaning at all. So that's my stance, and I'm Catholic.
They don't like that. So Israel likes the evangelicals in this country because they think they've got them on a leash. They paid off all their pastors and they keep giving them free trip after free trip and God knows what else. And so those pastors come home and go, oh yeah, God loves Netanyahu and genocides. Where's my money? Where's my money, right? So a lot of the evangelicals are in that camp. Now Tucker Carlson's driving some of the old school WASPs away from that camp. So things are starting to break. And the Catholics have been the clearest. We said no to war, and no, we have no theological reason to serve the modern state and of Israel and their foreign government. No, that's not part of our theology at all. And so Israel, in my opinion, John, has said, unleash the hounds, release the Kraken. So Republican politicians all the way through Donald Trump, Republican media, all through Fox News and Sean Hannity, you must attack the Catholic Church and take them down. There will be an immediate price for opposing Israel. That's my guess. What do you think?
I mean, that's an interesting theory. Some of the examples you cited I hadn't seen previously. I think it makes sense. I think it also could be as simple as when somebody disagrees with Donald Trump, he fires every nuke in his arsenal at them because that is how tiny he is, and or maybe it's a combination of both. I mean, maybe one explains Donald Trump's behavior and the other explains Sean Hannity and all the others. I don't know. I don't know. My personal theory is that Donald Trump's like destiny in life is to establish himself as the literal antichrist, and for some reason, his base just isn't wising up to that, so he's having to make it more obvious, like in his remaining time. I don't know, but he also seems just dead set on driving every voter group against himself. And I also have to say, I am enjoying the increasingly difficult positions he is putting JD Vance in every single day as he exposes all of JD Vance's supposed ideological or religious values as being utterly shallow. They're just posturing. He doesn't mean any of it. He's not actually against the war. He's not actually Catholic. He'll be whatever he needs to be to keep the job he has and hopefully set up for the next one.
Yeah, so I think JD Vance is key. Look, of course it's possible that Trump's just on a bender, right? You guys crazed, and if you criticize him slightly, he's so weak, he's so pathetically insecure that he'll hold a grudge forever. So that's a perfectly logical theory, and it could be both, it could be either. I acknowledge all that. And to give even more facts on the side of Trump being an idiot and just doing it on his own, I heard a theory which I thought instantly like, oh my God, that's probably true. That one of his talking points that his handlers, I don't mean Israeli handlers, like his people in the White House, et cetera, advisors told Trump was, hey, when he did the sacrilegious picture of him as Jesus healing someone, they said, tell people that was doctored. And he thought, tell them that you're a doctor. So like, I totally acknowledge there is no depth to how stupid Donald Trump is. And so he might be doing it on his own. But you mentioned the important person there, John, JD Vance. See, because if Trump is doing it on his own, Vance has to cover his ass because he's gonna run for office. Obviously he's gonna run for president in 28, and he's pretending to be a Catholic. So which way did he go? Well, that might be telling, and I think it was telling, because he also attacked the Pope and then went to a dinner. I don't know which came first, probably the dinner, but with Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer and all of the top Israel First donors. And so Miriam Adelson sat next to Vance's wife and they yucked it up at Mar-a-Lago. So Vance has made his decision. He's going Israel first, not America first. And he also attacked the Pope, even though he's pretending to be Catholic. Yeah. So that tells me it's at least a combination, and it might be more Israel than just Trump being an idiot.
Well, why don't we take our break? Because when we come back, we're actually gonna talk a little bit about that dinner and some of the other people that JD Vance has been appealing to.
We didn't blow up diplomacy.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
All right, let's go to Super Chat. Spirit of Pakistani Jirga Force says, Cenk and John, anyone watch the viral clips of Steve Bannon urinating in his pants? No, I didn't see that, but now I'm forced to check that out. The clip has gone viral. Also, I didn't realize until today, this month, Arab American Heritage Month. Happy for that. If US government claims civilians are shields for terrorists, one could argue Hamas targeted the IDF on 10/7, and the IDF used civilians as shields. Half the 1,400 were IDF. Both sides use this logic. So lots of stuff in there, but it was a little under 1,200 people killed on October 7th. 2/3 of them were civilians, 1/3 were military. So it's not like they didn't target military, they did, but it's also not like they didn't target civilians, they did. And of course, Israel's civilian kill ratio is worse than Hamas because it's a terrorist state. Bert writes in, comment in this, pretty strong verbiage. Israel will not be bombing Lebanon any longer. They are prohibited from doing so by the USA. Enough is enough. That's what Trump said. Yeah, no, I meant to make this point during the segment on Lebanon. No, he said that after Israel and Lebanon did their 10-day ceasefire. So it's like fake bravado, like, oh, they're not the boss of me. I'm the boss of them. No, they already made the deal. So like, it's totally fake. Elliot ZP says, the missing piece is that Iran needs money to build back. Otherwise, Israel and US will now mow the lawn again. If they're giving up Hormuz and not getting relief or reparations, that just doesn't make sense. Elliot, you're 100% right. That doesn't make any sense at all. So that's definitely not what's happening. YT Pure News says, on the plus side, if this makes the USA abandon Christianity, we might finally get some more stem cell research funding. Okay, not much of an upside. Okay, so back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John, a couple of quick things for you guys. I was reading a comment during the social break about how there's a super chat about, well, at least if we give up Christianity, we'll get more stem cell research. I love stem cell research, okay, but I don't want anybody losing their faith over politics or war, etc. And then Verdi1 is a YouTube member and wrote in, does this feel personal, Cenk? Wish health and safety for all Turks. No, not at all, because I don't really, to me, Israel killing Palestinians isn't any better than them killing Turks. Any worse, any better. And at least Turkey can defend themselves, whereas the Palestinians couldn't. So, okay, now the second thing is we tell you about our sponsors because I think that they're actually terrific. And in this case, it'll save you a lot of money. So if you're paying over $50 for your cell phone service, it makes no sense, none. Why are you giving away your money? So Noble Mobile Max you can pay is $50. I pay in the 30s because they give you money back if you don't use your data. We're all on Wi-Fi, we don't use our data. It's beautiful. So tyt.com/switch. Nothing on my phone changed, numbers the same, no phone's the same. Cell phone service is perfect for me. I hope, and it's T-Mobile, so they're now maybe the #1 cell phone service. tyt.com/switch. For God's sake, save some money and do it as soon as you can. Oh, $40 off this month if you switch now. tyt.com/switch. All right, John.
Okay, let's continue a talk we were having before the break, starting with this.
So JD Vance has been the RNC finance chair for the last year plus, and he's been using that to basically position himself to run for president next year. And one of the ways he's doing this is by raising money for the RNC, which in addition to helping raise the committee $60 million, is also putting JD Vance in front of a lot of people who could be pretty helpful to him next year.
Yes, both of those things are happening, and I have a feeling I know which one JD Vance cares more about. He is certainly meeting a lot of people with a whole lot of money, and we're gonna get into who those donors are and what they might hope to get out of a Vance presidency. But first, Cenk, what are your 2 cents?
Yeah, this is super telling. So where you get your money from is who you serve. In American politics, especially if you take corporate PAC money and foreign government money, which is the overwhelming majority of politicians in our country, it's a lock. It's not optional. Once you take money from those people, they serve them literally 100% of the time in my 30 years of covering politics. So let's see who JD Vance is taking money from and who he'll serve.
100%. This is important for everyone to know, but if you're a MAGA person, if you're a conservative and you have an idea of who you think JD Vance is and who he would serve, you're about to find out a whole lot more. Take a look.
So if there are billionaires like Paul Singer, who is a Republican megadonor who actually works pretty hard to make sure JD Vance was not the vice president a year or two ago. Paul Singer is a JD person. He's gotten close with JD Vance. JD Vance is also close to Elon Musk, as we've sort of have seen them, get to know each other pretty well over the last year, I'd say. JD Vance has also been meeting with people like Peter Thiel. We reported that Thiel and Vance had a meal together at the vice president's residence a few weeks ago. This is all happening, of course, Katie, behind the scenes. Like, no, we're not seeing JD Vance do these things like we're seeing him in Iowa, we're seeing him in Hungary. But he is not doing these things solely out of the goodness of his heart. He wants to raise money for the RNC, but he's also pretty aware that people like Peter Thiel and Paul Singer could be pretty helpful if he runs next year against maybe someone like Marco Rubio.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he's not publicizing it more. I mean, if it's something that's good for America, you'd think he'd be talking about it. It's weird that he wants to keep so much of this private. So let's dive into a little bit more about what we know about the sort of people he's been meeting with, the possible donors. And I apologize in advance, there's a lot here, because if you've been wondering why JD Vance doesn't appear to have accomplished anything as vice president over the last 14 months, it appears to be because he spent every second of every day talking with the richest people in America. So let's see, he's hosted all these events, or he's gone to all these fundraising events. Many of them have been heavy on tech leaders, whether those are early PayPal executives, podcasters, hell, the co-founder of Google, Sergey Brin, one of the world's wealthiest people. You've of course got Peter Thiel, as was acknowledged in the video, co-founder of Palantir and long-term mentor to JD Vance, who financed a $15 million super PAC for Vance back in 2022. They apparently had a meal just a couple of weeks ago. He's also got Singer, who was talked about in the video. Singer recently contributed the maximum $443,000 to the RNC because for some reason that's a thing that's legal in a functioning democracy. Last October, Vance hosted more than 40 members of Singer's larger donor network, the American Opportunity Alliance, at the vice president's residence for breakfast, according to 3 people with knowledge of the gathering. And if you're a conservative or if you're MAGA, have you ever been invited to the vice president's place to have bacon and waffles? No? There's a certain type of person that does pretty frequently. He's also worked to win over Miriam Adelson, who had been more of like a Marco Rubio aligned person before, but big supporter of Donald Trump, giving him over $100 million in the last election. JD Vance spent New Year's Eve with Adelson and his wife, Usha Vance, at Mar-a-Lago, with the 2 women seated next to another and hitting it off, supposedly. And then, of course, he's cultivated ties with Elon Musk, Jeff Yass, Steven Schwartzman, Paul Johnson. I mean, every billionaire basically that you can think of. I guess other than Tom Steyer, he's been palling around with. Typical populist stuff, Cenk. What do you make of all this?
Almost everyone on that list is Israel first. So Elon Musk goes along with it, but he's not necessarily Israel first, but everyone else are huge donors to politicians that support Israel. They're huge donors to eliminate anyone who doesn't, whether it's Democrats like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, or currently Singer and Adelson are spending a fortune to try to defeat Tom Massey in Kentucky because he's a Republican who has dared to defy Israel, and they vowed to eliminate any of Israel's political opponents here in America. And so if they're giving money to JD Vance, that means JD Vance is bought, lock, stock, and barrel. So you mentioned Rubio because Rubio is Israel first, foremost, only. He's a total servant of Israel to the point where I would have him investigated to see if he's an asset of Israel, technically. We've seen the emails now, Larry Ellison saying to the Israeli ambassador, I've talked to Marco Rubio, this back in 2016, and he will serve Israel, and I've sent him $5 million to a super PAC. So, and these pro-Israel forces have been piling up a mountain of money for Marco Rubio. That's why they wanted Rubio as vice president, not JD Vance, and they were aggrieved. So that's just a little bit of a battle they lost there. And that led people to thinking, well, maybe JD Vance isn't pro-Israel. No, he's just not as guaranteed back then as Rubio was. Rubio is a proven commodity. They have bought that product over and over again, and every time Rubio is delivered for Israel. Vance is newer to politics. He was created in a petri dish by Peter Thiel just back in 2022. Thiel is not necessarily Israel first either, but him and Musk and the Silicon Valley bros are like, oh, are we all making money doing a surveillance state? High five. Well, so they're in that category. Did Vance always serve the Silicon Valley bros, the tech bros, and all the Bitcoin and everything fake coming out of that quarter and crypto and all that? Absolutely, he was created by them. So, but that doesn't mean that he can't serve two masters. He's serving those guys, and now by wrapping his arms around Miriam Adelson and Singer, etc., he's saying, I kneel, I bow to Israel, I'll do whatever you want. So the jury's in. Vance is utterly useless, a snake in the grass.
Yeah, I mean, you cited earlier that once you see who's giving the money, you know who they are. You were saying that earlier, and that is basically true for every politician. I think it is more true for JD Vance than literally anyone else, because I don't know if there is a politician with less of a spine and less independence than JD Vance. He becomes literally there's no core. There's no spine, there's no ideology, there's no core value. He'll change his religion, he'll change which Republicans he's supporting. He'll totally go back on his word on politics, religion, anything. More so than I think any other politician we've seen. And once they've given him, I don't know, what are they gonna give him? $200 million in the primary or something like that to beat Tucker Carlson or something. There's no way in hell he is ever gonna defy them after that. That's my view. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, that's indisputable. I mean, literally, he was a no one in 2021. No one had ever heard of him. And back then, he was like, oh, Trump's a Nazi. And then Peter Thiel's like, here's $15 million, bitch. And he's like, Trump is a god and our savior and our Lord, and the Pope's evil. Pope's evil, but Trump's the savior. Wait, I thought he was a Nazi like a minute ago, right? So now he's like, oh, I'm anti-war and stuff. Miriam, you got money. We have more money than Peter. Oh my God, Miriam. Oh, I love war. War's awesome. What are you talking about? You know what? Israel is above America. Of course, I've always said Israel first. Yeah, JD. Well, put on another mask and then have another mask come off and round and round and go. But John, only good news is from some of the Trump voters online, I try to see, which way they're going, and when they're against us, they're very, very clear about it, right? Like on immigration, etc. And on the JD Vance issue, they're like, yeah, not buying it. Like, so they're seeing the same thing we're seeing, and of course, most like above 50 years old, you're watching television, your brain's like slopified. And so those guys are all gonna be like, oh, JD Vance, he's holier than the Pope. Sean Hannity told me, and war is awesome, and I love Israel, right? So put those like zombies aside. Online, right wing, they can see that he's taking money from Miriam Adelson. And I think, I'm gonna be a little bold here. I think he's done. I don't think he can win a Republican primary kissing Israeli ass.
I would love to see that, but we're gonna have to wait and find out. I think that's probably all the time we have.
Oh yeah. All right, you're awesome, John. Everybody check out Damage Report.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic show. 1 o'clock Eastern every day on YouTube, on tyt.com, and everywhere we are. By the way, we're also now on Amazon Prime. We've got a 24-hour channel. That's where I watch my Damage Report. So check that out when you get a chance as well. You can also catch this podcast. We'll be right back. We have so many more stories. Don't go anywhere.
Do you view Vice President JD Vance as your successor?
No.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, That's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd, but it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no, he's taking apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you can hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team.
David Sorrell, Nina Turner. Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Jack.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, even Fox and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, good, what we're talking about it now. You're like, it's 2024. And that's always been the critique, your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both worked to achieve, and I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making that.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy experience. You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
No one has paid the price like you have paid the price.
I'm a double.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yasmin Aliyah Khan with you guys. Yaz is also on Rebel HQ. Make sure you're checking that out. Make sure you're ringing the bell below to make sure you could keep up with the show. And we got a lot of news stories for you guys in this hour, including some Democrats. I know you're going to be shocked, demanding that we obey and fund Israel. Okay, Yaz, take it away.
Yeah, we're going to get right into the next story. Let's do it.
This is where now their double, triple standard on Israel is really showing, in my opinion. It totally takes any argument that they had that they're not anti-Israel and they're for protecting civilians if they're going to come for Iron Dome funding.
Okay. Jared Moskowitz is a Democrat from Florida. I know you're going to be shocked to find out he's taking a tremendous amount of money from AIPAC. We're going to show that to you a little bit later. And he's making a case in CNN that we have to kiss Israel's ass. Everything he says is a lie. So we're going to show you parts of it, and then we're going to debunk every single thing he says. So Yaz, take it away.
Yeah, and there is a lot to debunk in this one section that we're starting the second hour with. So yesterday, Representative Jared Moskowitz, he appeared on CNN to one, push for more aid to Israel, not less, more, and two, to chide Democratic voters who no longer want to support Israel. That's what we love to be lectured by these people. So you've already heard him claim that opposing additional aid for the Iron Dome is anti-Israel, but there's more. Let's watch.
Well, not only do I oppose it, I think it's the most hypocritical position they possibly could have. Well, because for the longest time, they've been talking about protecting civilians, right? And the reason they're upset is the civilian death in Gaza. They have every reason to be upset about that. I think that's a legitimate concern about how many civilians were killed in a war. But now they're going to say, well, we want more civilian death, because if you remove Iron Dome funding, it will lead to civilian death. And they're saying, well, it's an unfair advantage. Well, countries have unfair advantages. We have an unfair advantage, right? Our military is an unfair advantage with the Iranians. That's how this stuff works. Israel developed technology. Well, we shouldn't pay for it. Okay, well, we have THAAD missile systems in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain. We paid for that. They didn't pay for that. We gave them defensive THAAD missile systems. How come no one's saying remove those defensive missile systems?
All right, so in an earlier interview, or earlier in that same interview, Moskowitz portrayed Democratic voters as fervently and irrationally anti-Israel. Let's listen to that.
This idea that they can blame it on Netanyahu, well, when Netanyahu goes, right, and you're now on record with this, what, you're going to revert back and say, okay, now that he's gone, I can start sending offensive weapons? Because the base is never going to let them do that. Now they're locked in. Right, and so now they've boxed themselves into that. They're not going to be able to revert on this, and this movement's just going to keep going. Now it's going on to Iron Dome. For the longest time, we heard it was just about offensive weapons. We want to protect civilians. Iron Dome. It's all about civilians. In fact, the reason they're up in arms is because of the death of civilians in Gaza. Yeah. But now they want more civilian death.
That's what we want. We want more civilian deaths. That is the argument that he's actually trying to make right there in that interview. So if you're wondering where Moskowitz would draw the line, he explained that he would probably vote to block bulldozers that are being used for settling in the West Bank, probably.
What about the U.S. funding bulldozers, military bulldozers?
Look, I think, the bulldozer thing, I don't care about the bulldozers. I care more about the weaponry. So if they don't want to send bulldozers to the West Bank, that's fine. I probably could have supported something like that, because I'm not for the expansion of settlements in the West Bank.
Good, okay. I know Cenk has a ton of thoughts on all of this, but real quick, I just want to show you the AIPAC tracker. Let's look and see Jared Moskowitz and where he sits there. So as of February of this year, Moskowitz has taken over $1.5 million from pro-Israel lobby groups and their donors. So, something you notice whenever you see anybody who's very, very pro-Israel making the rounds in the media circuit, a lot of their talking points make no sense, and they really have to go out of their way to make them sound sensible, but they never are actually able to do that. And what we have here is a congressman who is telling the American people that, we don't know what we're talking about. We are advocating for more civilian deaths when everyone knows that that's a ridiculous thing. Cenk, you got a lot of thoughts on this. Let's hear him.
So he says that we have a double standard, the people that are in favor of peace. Okay, let's see who has a double standard, because my guess is that it's him. So once you hear the facts, so let's start with the facts. No, first of all, I was in favor of Iron Dome. I no longer am in favor of funding Iron Dome. So why is that? Because in the beginning I thought, well, I'm for protecting civilians, just like he's saying. So that makes sense. To protect Israeli civilians. Now, I don't want Israel occupying the Palestinians. I want them to end that oppression, etc. But those two things seem disconnected. But now that Israel has Iron Dome, what they have done is they have gotten emboldened to attack all of their neighbors. And they've attacked 7 different countries. And they keep bragging about, oh, so we got Iron Dome. So they feel invincible. So what it has done, ironically, counterintuitively, it has led to more civilian deaths, not less, because the monsters that are in charge of the Israeli government today, first of all, a lot of them are religious fanatics, and they don't think that Muslim lives are worth anything at all. And they're trying to set up greater Israel, and they've taken southern Lebanon, they've taken 53% of Gaza. And so they're the ones that now feel like, oh, okay, we got Iron Dome, so we can kill anyone we like. And they have, and it's led to massive number of lives lost that are civilians. Now, Israel, do they kill civilians? Like literally more than any terrorist group in the world, as you've heard me say many times, this comes from the Israeli press, 972 magazine. They got insider information about IDF files themselves, where the IDF says, yeah, Hamas's civilian kill ratio, for example, is 67%, and the IDF, in their own internal papers, admits their civilian kill ratio is 83%, monstrous. They target civilians and they kill them at mass scale, about 100 times more people killed by the IDF than Hamas, 100 times the civilian deaths. But do you notice what Moskowitz said there? Oh, I mean, there were some civilian lives lost in Gaza, and there could be some civilian lives lost in Israel if the Iron Dome is not fully funded. Wait, that's apples and oranges, right? Not because their lives are worth any different. I mean, I think that each life, whether Israeli or Palestinian, is worth exactly the same. The Israelis obviously don't believe that because they slaughter the Palestinians in massive, massive numbers. They've destroyed all of Gaza. If you didn't know that and you just listen to Moskowitz, you think, oh, I guess they lost 20 people and the other guys lost 20 people. No. So on October 7th, they lost nearly 1,200 people in Israel. The other side's lost at a bare minimum 72,000 people, but it looks like it's well over 100,000. And then now in Iran, we've got over 3,000 dead. And how many dead in Israel? Well, 23. Well, the 23 are also tragic, but again, it's well over 100 times more Iranians killed. Since they have Iron Dome, Israel thinks, let's go hit Lebanon, let's go hit Iran, let's go slaughter all the Palestinians in Gaza. And then they brag, well, we didn't kill them all. It's not a Holocaust, it's just a genocide. And did you notice he didn't say genocide? He said, oh, there's a war and civilian deaths happen. No, it's not equal, Jared. It's not even close to equal. And you know that, but you kind of like it. So that's why you think like, yes, Israel should be allowed to destroy them, but not a single super precious Israeli life. The Israeli lives are perfectly precious, but so are the Palestinian lives. And Moskowitz doesn't seem to give a damn about that. He's like, no, we want, and we demand that America fund it. Why does America have to fund it? Why don't you fund your own defense? No, you owe us. Wait, who's us? Who's us? What do you mean we owe? We don't owe Israel anything at all. No, you have to pay for their defenses so they can go on the offense and kill more people and attack more countries and take more land. No, we don't have to do that, Jared. We don't have to do that at all. And you should care about America and not a different country. I know they bribed you $1.5 million. And I know that you love Israel anyway, and you couldn't care less about Muslim lives because you're deeply bigoted. But stop lying. So now, is it true that, oh, Israel, Saudi Arabia, other countries, oh, they're all the same? No, the THAAD missiles in Saudi Arabia and the other countries are to protect our bases there, our troops. Did you mention that, Jared? No, you conveniently left that out, pretending as if we're giving the Saudis free money. But did we give Israel free money? Well, let's find out who's got the double standard. AIPAC's PAC and AIPAC's super PAC UDP spent nearly $126.9 million combined during the 23-24 election cycle, according to the FEC. I'm sure the Israeli lobby gave $127 million to the politicians and said, gratis, just for your own benefit and charity and general well-being. No, they bought them like they bought you. So that they give 126 and then you're gonna see what they got in return, which is a monster number. This includes more than $55.2 million in donations given to federal candidates, at least $45.2 million of which went to campaigns of members of the new 119th US Congress. 349 representatives and senators, or 65% of the 535 total members, received campaign funding from AIPAC during the 23-24 election cycle. Now, The Guardian has all of the Israeli lobby and what they've given throughout the years, and they have the number at 94%. The Israeli lobby is given to 94% of Congress. Well, what did they get anything back? Let's find out. Israel has been the largest cumulative recipient of US foreign aid since its founding, receiving over $300 billion adjusted for inflation in total economic and military assistance. Now, that's just before the genocide, but Biden sent them $21 billion during the genocide. Murder more Palestinians. Why? Because Biden's #1 lifetime donor is AIPAC. Oh, you can't say that. That's anti-Semitic to say facts. No, it's just facts. Bernie Sanders is the one saying, don't send the bulldozers and the bombs. And did you see Moskowitz say, I don't care much about the bulldozers, but you have to send the bombs. We haven't murdered enough Palestinians, send the bombs, send the bombs. No, we don't have to send the bombs, Jared. Okay, we don't owe Israel anything. It's a foreign country. It's a foreign country that's done a genocide and that's put a moral stain on us. So stop lying. So Moskowitz is a giant liar who goes out like, oh, poor little Israel, we didn't do anything. Oh, you guys have a double standard. I bet you're anti-Semitic, okay? Israel gets to do genocides, and if you complain about genocides, and you complain about the 7 neighbors that they attacked, and you complain that they dragged us into a war, that makes no sense. You're anti-Israel, you hate civilian lives. No, you hate the idea of protecting civilian lives if they're Muslims or Arabs or Persians, because your beloved Israel needs more land. So every part of that segment was a lie by Moskowitz, not to protect Florida, where he's from, or America, but protect his beloved homeland of Israel. Be honest, Jared, be honest. No, of course, there's no chance Jared Moskowitz is gonna be honest. He's deeply duplicitous. And no, Jared, stop smearing all Jewish people. It's not about Jewish people. Bernie Sanders, Raskin, so many others have done great work on behalf of America and peace. It's scum like you who take bribes, having nothing to do with your religion. So does Lindsey Graham, so does Cory Booker, so does Ted Cruz. And you all grovel for that money and you all serve your donors, including Israel. Okay, that's my thoughts.
That's a lot of thoughts, yeah. I think at this point it's embarrassing for these Congress people to be out there publicly defending Israel because they can never seem to come up with a good defense of American involvement and funding in Israel, because there really isn't one. They have to know also that one of the big distinctions between midterm candidates this year is and will be, as we get closer to November, whether or not these candidates support American money and taxpayer dollars going over to Israel for aid, whether that's defensive or offensive, and whether or not the candidates are taking money from AIPAC. It is already popping up all over the place in town halls. People are asking them on social media. Every time these candidates are doing interviews, a lot of times they get asked, do you take money from AIPAC? Some of them understand that it is a bad thing because they're kind of lying about it. They're saying, no, I don't take AIPAC money, but they're still getting money from AIPAC and from similar PACs by going in a roundabout way. So they do understand that it's a bad look. They can pretend not to be aware of the fact that people are not gonna vote for them because of this, but they have to actually know. The DNC doesn't want to acknowledge that Kamala Harris lost a lot of her would-be voters because of this one particular issue. They can pretend, like let's not document any of that, so there's no record of any of this taking place, and that's not the reason why the Democrats lost in 2024, but they know what the real reason is. And their arguments fall apart before they even get started whenever they go on these media tours, because the real reason they're doing any of this stuff, the real reason why they're so supportive of Israel is heinous, right? They know that a lot of this is indefensible. They know that for the first time in this country's history, really, or in Israel's history, I should say, this is the first time that the American people are actually seeing Israel for what it is, or seeing what it is doing to the Palestinian people. And for the first time, the American people are on the side of the Palestinians, not the Israelis. And it's really just by virtue of we have more information now than we did before. Before, we really had no idea what was going on over there. We only knew what was being told to us by our government. And social media, for better or for worse, has given us a much different perspective on the entire situation. We are seeing for ourselves what is happening, and all the propaganda tactics that they're used to using against us, they're simply not working anymore, or at least not as effective as they used to be.
Yes. In fact, I want to give a couple more numbers here to prove our point.
Yeah.
So first of all, 80% of Democratic voters are against this war, but Moskowitz is like, my voters, who cares? I serve Israel, right? Did you know, and this is really important, 63% of Jewish Americans say that they support Israel but are against the current Israeli government. Did you hear Moskowitz? He was like, they say that this is against Netanyahu, but then they're not gonna give Israel any more money after Netanyahu, so it's okay, give it to Netanyahu. Wait, now you're against 63% of Jewish Americans. So what explains this? What explains this is obvious, the money. So as we just told you, AIPAC given $127 million, but that's just in this last election cycle. I've seen reports that over the course of their history that AIPAC and the Israeli lobby have given over $1 billion. That's a lot of money to the politicians, but what did they get back? I didn't get to finish. Biden gave 21 billion, and I forgot to come back to Trump gave them about 13 billion. So we're now at over $330 billion we've given to Israel. So they spend $1 billion lobbying, and in return they get $330 billion. Well, that's an amazing deal. So, and I don't blame Israel for doing it. If you're a foreign government, you'd be nuts not to do that. We basically legalized bribery in this country. So if I was gonna give somebody $1 and I was gonna get $330 back, I'd keep giving them $1. That's logic. It has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with math and corruption, right? But they want to try to use Jewish Americans as human shields and hide behind them to protect Israel. Why? Because they're getting bribed by the Israeli lobby. And I don't know Moskowitz's personal inclinations towards Israel, but it doesn't really matter because the only thing that matters is brother gets a $1.5 million personally, and then he turns around and goes, no, John and Sally in Kansas and in Florida and Rhode Island and Hawaii, shut up, go back to work. I'm gonna take money from you and I'm gonna send it over to Israel, who coincidentally gave me $1.5 million. That's why I'm against Jewish Americans, 63% of them. I'm against 80% of my own voters. So Jared, we see you. You can go on CNN and have Dana Bash cover your ass and not tell anyone in her audience. She's lying, by the way, implicitly by not telling them, by the way, this guy I'm talking to has been bribed by Israel to the tune of at least $1.5 million. That might be relevant when you're hearing him talk, but no one in mainstream media would ever do that because they don't cover the news, they cover up the news. So that's why you see the lies in front of you. And again, I'm not mad at Israel for doing something rational. I don't like it, I don't want it, I don't want to send the money. It's rational for us to say no more. I'm mad at people like Jared Moskowitz who are pretending to be Americans, but meanwhile taking money from a foreign government's lobby and serving that foreign government. And I'm also mad at the Dana Bashes of the world who lie to you and pretend that those people are honest and honorable and decent and moral people representing you when she knows how much money he's taken and she knows that he's against 80% of his own voters. But shh, let's do a nice little fluff propaganda piece for Israel. It'll only be the millionth in a row on CNN and mainstream media.
Yeah, I mean, if we're at the point where their best explanation as to why the American people don't support any of this is that we just love seeing more civilian deaths, they are so far gone that they really should just be embarrassed at this point. And I hope it pays well. Like, I hope it was all worth it, because otherwise this really just reads like a humiliation ritual of some sort. Like, he sounds so stupid, and this is what they're feeding the American people. They're treating us like we're stupid. They're trying to gaslight us into this line of thinking, and maybe people buy it. I would hope that CNN viewers don't. I would hope that they don't think that we're over here advocating for more civilian deaths, but you never know anymore.
Yeah, notanother.com. That's a pledge to never vote for any politician that gives more money to Israel. I mean, my God, imagine a bunch of politicians in America taking money from the Serb government in the middle of them genociding Kosovo and Bosnia and Srebrenica. They come and they go, no, the real victims are the Serbs. We have to send them more money. I mean, there's civilian deaths on the Serb side too. They're all equal. We all have to send them more money to kill more innocent human beings. No, that would be a monstrous thing to do. This is the same thing, actually much worse. Israel has killed far more than the Serbs have in their genocide. All right, we'll be back. All right, right, let's go to Twitch for a second. Late bloomer Mad Grandma says, Cenk, I need to know, do you condemn Hassan Piker? JK, she says. Okay, look, I mean, that's exactly right, because Dana Bash let the liar Jared Moskowitz lie all over television. No condemnations of genocide, nothing. But do you condemn Hassan Piker? She did a whole segment on that. She's like, oh, the real problem isn't a genocide. The real problem isn't 72,000 people slaughtered. The real problem is Hassan said something naughty about Israel. Israel's the victim of Hassan Piker is so powerful, more powerful than Israel. What a bunch of pathetic liars they are on television. Such an obvious misdirection. Oh God, distract everyone. Everybody panic, our beloved Israel's in trouble. Hassan's the problem. By the way, you and Anna is, and I am, and Tucker is. Sure we are, you freaking liars. Fab Forces, I checked, and Shop TYT is still selling the AIPAC shirt. I definitely would wear that instead of an AIPAC tee. That was a funny little thing we did, but check it out on shoptyt.com. Teddy Lucy Linda says, it's still devastating to me that it took this long for the American public to finally see Israel for the terrorist state that it is. Gaza had to be destroyed and we had to invade Iran for this. To me, it's still not that people care about the loss of life, but rather because they are directly affected by the war. A sad statement on humanity in this country. I hear you, brother, but it was partly the genocide. It was actually, but more of it was because of online media. Because that same exact genocide could happen. Every single thing could have happened, but if there was no online media and it was like the bad old days, CNN and New York Times would have just told you, oh no, Israel's the victim. And everybody in America would have believed it because our media is liars. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Yaz, and Dana Woods. Thanks for joining by hitting the join button below. We appreciate it. Yaz, what's next?
Yeah, this is a fun, lighter story. Some good news. Let's roll the tape.
When I ran for mayor, I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today, we're taxing the rich.
All right, so Trump's BFF, Zohran Mamdani, has upset him. The bromance was always perhaps doomed to fail, especially once Zohran actually started following through on his campaign promises, including the one to actually tax the rich. I'm gonna show you the rest of Zohran's plan as well as Trump's reaction to it. But first, Cenk, this is refreshing. I love seeing a mayor in action doing what he promised to do. What are your thoughts?
I think this is a genius move by Zohran. I'm gonna give you a whole bunch of reasons why after you get the facts from Yaz.
All right, so let's watch the rest of Zohran's tax day announcement before we go any further.
This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so, they're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working New Yorkers. Now, it's coming to an end. This tax will raise at least $500 million directly for the city. It'll help fund things like free childcare, cleaner streets, and safer neighborhoods. As mayor, I believe everyone has a role to play in contributing to our city, and some a little bit more than others. Happy Tax Day, New York.
Happy tax day indeed, and there was much rejoicing. Even New York Governor Kathy Hochul is on board with this plan, hoping that it's going to help close a $5.4 billion fiscal gap. The plan is expected to raise at least $500 million per year for New York. But there was also a lot of complaining, and I'm sure you can guess exactly who from. Yesterday, Donald Trump posted this to Truth Social. He said, sadly, Mayor Mamdani is destroying New York. It has no chance. The United States of America should not contribute to its failure. It will only get worse. The tax policies are so wrong. People are fleeing. They must change their ways and fast. History has proven this stuff just doesn't work. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. This tax stuff doesn't work. He hates it. So other critics of the plan are, again, exactly who you would expect them to be. It is the billionaires. And according to them, the mayor's new plan is demonizing philanthropists, that is a quote, and also stirring up class warfare. It's so funny to me that they still think that people buy the angle that billionaires are also philanthropists. I would hope that by now people understand that that's not really what it is. All of these charities are just like tax havens for them. So hedge fund billionaire Daniel Loeb, who fought against Mamdani during his mayoral race, had this to say. He said, you can't tax a city into prosperity and you don't attract capital by demonizing philanthropists. Yeah, okay, well, let's try it. Let's just try it and see what happens. Another hedge fund billionaire insisted that Mamdani's tax plan would actually harm his constituents more than it would help them. He didn't really say how or why that would happen, so again, you know what, let's just see what happens. And while Governor Hochul has been supportive of this move, she has proven to be an obstacle to Mamdani's overall plan to raise income taxes on New York City millionaires and billionaires. So yeah, this is an incredible plan. Cenk, why don't you tell them a little bit more about how good it actually is?
Yeah, so first I want to address Daniel Loeb, and then I'm going to tell you 5 reasons why this plan is genius. So Daniel Loeb said, you're not taxing billionaires, you're taxing philanthropists. Sure. Okay, so do some of the rich do some philanthropy? Yeah, they're like, oh, I do. I love the opera and ballet. I give money to Lincoln Center and the Met. Okay, I don't really care about that at all. That buys you nothing. Oh, I had cancer. My brother had cancer, so I gave some money to cancer. I went to Harvard, so I gave money to Harvard. Wow, you're such a philanthropist. What a big deal. Okay, and that is a tiny percentage of their money. When you do a real percentage in a tax, you're like, whoa, wait, I thought you were a philanthropist. It's going for childcare. Don't you want childcare in New York? No, shut up and give me my money. Okay, that's what I thought, Daniel. That's what I thought. So shove your philanthropist up your ass, okay? You're a total BSer, and you know one of the big things that Loeb gives philanthropy to is politicians, so they'll support Israel. Wow, I didn't know you were Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, anyways, so now 5 reasons why this is genius. Number 1, he made a promise to tax the rich, and politicians always make a promise and they never deliver on it. Boom, he delivered on it. So he's gonna get a lot of credibility from his voters, and remember, he won comfortably, so you wanna make sure that your voters are happy. That's not bad, that's good in a democracy, that you're supposed to serve the voters and not a bunch of rich philanthropists, okay? So that's point 1. Point 2 is, you gotta get the money from somewhere to do the programs that he mentioned. That's a second promise, like childcare. Well, if you're gonna get the money, you're gonna get it from either poor or middle class people or wealthy people, but he's getting it from wealthy people who don't even live in New York. It's genius, right? So that's a great idea. Number 3, I talked to some New Yorkers, including some that are wealthy, and they're like, no, we like this one. You know why? Because they don't like the guys who don't actually live in New York, who have like investment properties, who are like Saudis or Chinese or Russians, or philanthropists who live in Florida. By the way, a lot of them moved out of New York for tax reasons, but they wanted to have their fancy apartments in New York. So now when you tax them a little bit on that, they're like, oh, now I'll only have 17.9 billion. Oh, I know. It breaks my heart. I feel so bad for you guys. Number 4 reasons, billionaires crying about him. It's awesome for Mamdani. I mean, if you're a politician, like a lot of the politicians don't know this because they spend most of their time living up billionaires' asses. I'm sorry, I meant philanthropists. And so they're like, the billionaires are the greatest. No, you idiots, that's terrible politics. If a billionaire is crying about what you've done, you're gonna get so many more votes. Speaking of crying, I think I lost, I'm down for it now, I think. You know who has property in New York but doesn't live in New York and will be subject to this tax? Donald J. Trump. So you're guaranteed to have Trump criticize you, which makes you even more popular in New York. You see how significant this win is. And finally, no, I'm up to 5. Now I got it. Okay, so 5 solid reasons why every part of this helps Mamdani and helps the people of New York. So really, chef's kiss, couldn't have done it any better.
Yeah, I mean, since I've been on this show, Cenk, I don't know what went on in the first hour, but so far what I've learned about leftists is that we love civilian deaths and we also hate philanthropists and philanthropy. Like, it's so ridiculous. That is seriously what they're trying to tell people. And I really just hope that people don't actually believe that because it's so silly. But I will give a lot of credit to Mamdani. for at least trying to deliver on his campaign promises. And it seems as though he is making a lot of headway into, I mean, he's only been in office for a few months and he's already helped, started to clean up the city. He's filling in potholes and he is taxing the rich, or he's beginning to in a really serious way. And as you laid out, it's a pretty, easy way to dip your toe into something like this, but he's garnering a lot of public support for it already. So maybe going forward, he will have even more public support going forward. The millionaires and the billionaires who reside in New York, whether or not they're there full-time or part-time, whatever, a lot of them did threaten to leave New York City once Mamdani became elected, became the mayor, and they really haven't been doing that. We haven't really seen this mass exodus of all of these millionaires and billionaires and all of their money leaving the city. So I guess we'll see if this is the thing that does it for them. But there have been people who work in different industries in the city, specifically in like real estate, and they're not really worried about it. They're not worried that things are gonna slow down because of this. People who have their money, they're going to be able to afford to pay those taxes. And ultimately, it's still worth a lot to just be in New York City and do your business there. So they'll pay the taxes, and they're gonna lose some money, but it's not any more money than they already have to lose from different kinds of regulations and things. I think nowadays the millionaires and the billionaires have become so emboldened and so powerful, especially with Donald Trump sitting in the White House, that they really feel as though they can get away with anything. Whatever regulations there were against them have been practically eradicated. So they do feel like they have free reign over the country and all the money that's there. There was another billionaire, there was another billionaire in New York who was saying, this is just the game of capitalism and I'm winning. Not everyone is playing with you. We don't want to play this weird, sick game that you have. He was asked whether or not he felt bad about taking money from people from the city when people don't have homes or don't have access to healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And he was like, no, I'm winning. Like, it's very narcissistic, but I don't think you become a billionaire without being a bit of a narcissist anyway. So I'm very excited to see what Mamdani has up his sleeve going forward. He already has a solution to all those black trash bags all over the sidewalks in New York City that he's gonna be rolling out soon. That's very exciting. And also we had to cut it from the video that we played you, but he had like the Succession music playing in the background, which I thought was a really nice touch. The man has his finger on the right pulse.
Agreed. All right, let's do one more story in this segment.
All right, so let's see. Okay, so Snap Inc. and Disney announced that they each plan to lay off 1,000 employees. And now the Wall Street Journal poses a critical question. Are we now living in the era of the mega layoff? Cenk, I feel like we've been in the era. What are your 2 cents?
Yeah, so no, it's begun. This is the tip of the iceberg, and we're gonna hit that iceberg super hard. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Yaz is gonna tell you about a bunch of significant layoffs across multiple different companies. But the most important part is the trend that it's setting off. So let's give you the facts and then discuss.
Okay, so on Wednesday, Snap CEO Evan Spiegel stated that his company's layoffs were directly related to new AI technology, which is what we all know, but they say it out loud now. So he said, we believe that rapid advancements in artificial intelligence enable our teams to reduce repetitive work, increase velocity, and better support our community, partners, and advertisers. He said, we have already witnessed small squads leveraging AI tools to drive meaningful progress across several important initiatives, blah, blah, blah. And according to Snap, AI agents are already generating over 65% of the company's new code and responding to over 1 million queries per month. The layoffs hit about 16% of the company's workforce. Snap's stock price, however, increased 7% after the announcement. That is a trend, keep your eye on that. So one day earlier, Disney announced that they too were laying off 1,000 employees. And while Disney did not explicitly name check AI, the company implied that AI had something to do with it. So Josh D'Amaro, the CEO of Disney, stated this. He said, given the fast moving pace of our industries, this requires us to constantly assess how to foster a more agile and technologically enabled workforce to meet tomorrow's needs. However, Disney is a much larger company than Snap, meaning that its 1,000 layoffs impacted less than 1% of its workforce. But there's more on Disney later that I can mention. After the announcement, though, Disney shares went up about 1.5%. So Snap and Disney aren't the only companies announcing layoffs. Recently, we've heard from Amazon and Block and also from Oracle. They have all downsized. And the Wall Street Journal has labeled this trend as the mega layoff. And there's a reason why it exists. So employers are seizing on the potential financial upsides of severing swaths of their workforces at once. That is a departure from not long ago when mass layoffs registered as a sign of trouble or mismanagement, and that a company needed to take drastic measures to right its performance. But now such a company is more likely to get a big stock bump and praise from investors for acting boldly. And in fact, Block has claimed that after it laid off nearly half of its employees, other executives reached out to ask how they could do likewise at their own companies. So I feel like, if anything, we are living in the era of stock market manipulation. Cenk, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Okay, first, a tiny bit of nuance. So Snap is probably a little bit different than the others. It's a smaller company, and it might be, disguising some of its problems with saying, oh, we're getting more efficient through AI. So sometimes a company here or there will have its own particular problems, right? Now, I don't know the details of what Snap is going through, so that's just a general point, right? But overall, is it a trend that is affecting some companies and soon most companies? Definitely. So I've been telling you for a while now, I've been hearing about in the business world that there's a competition to cut 25% of their workforce. And it's perceived as whoever gets there first has an advantage, and that everybody else has to catch up super quick. This article is almost word for word what I've been telling you for at least 6 months here. But except there is a big difference. Now the competition is closer to trying to get to getting rid of 40% of your workforce. So, okay, that's an epic disaster, and they don't seem to understand. I think right now, like the lowest IQ people work on Wall Street. And so, let me explain, it's not just a random insult, oh, I don't like rich people. No, I get it, I'm a capitalist, I understand it. And I understand the rules of the markets serve. But now they're all getting incredible praise and the stock bump. That's the most important thing. Their stock price goes up when they fire more people. And again, there's some logic to it from a business perspective, because then your costs are lower. And if you can still bring in the same revenue with lower costs, of course the market's gonna reward you because now you're making more profit. I understand all that. But guys, let's take the lower number, forget 40, let's say 25%. If everybody fires 25% of their workforce, knucklehead on Wall Street, what do you think is gonna happen? They're like lemmings running off the cliff. And they're like, wee, this is so much fun. You're right, for about 12 seconds it's super fun until you hit the bottom, okay? But when you have massive, unprecedented unemployment, who's gonna buy your stuff? And it feels like, yes, they're not even thinking about that at all. I'm not sure it's occurred to any of them, whether it's Wall Street or our politicians. As usual, the only guy I hear talking about AI and warning about the apocalypse, economic apocalypse, is Ro Khanna. But outside of him, the politicians are like, oh great, 25% unemployment. Are you crazy? That'll totally obliterate our economy. So yeah, I couldn't be more worried.
Yeah, and Mark Cuban, he actually did bring up that same point. And this was years ago. He's like, we need people to have money so they can buy our stuff. Right now, however, the bulk of the vast majority, I don't have the exact number, but the vast majority of our economy, apart from the stock market, all the purchasing power is coming from a very small group of people. Like the upper middle class and upper classes are doing the bulk of the spending in this country. So maybe they're just going to start relying on those people more, but I don't know what they think is going to happen long term. If people are homeless and are just on the streets and can't afford food, like what kind of dystopia are you hoping to build and create and live in? And they all have their bunkers somewhere else down in New Zealand or wherever they're going. Like they all think that they're hobbits now, like they're very hobbit core of the billionaires. That's what they're doing now. But as far as Disney, I did say that it had some more points about that one. Perfect Union just reported that of those Disney layoffs, they're laying off about 8% of the Marvel workers specifically. And they're also in the process of moving Marvel Studios from Atlanta, Georgia to the UK. And they're also converting a bunch of their salaried workers to contract workers. And why are they doing any of this? Because they won't have to pay them benefits. They don't want to have to pay for healthcare for their workers. So what they're doing is converting the salary people to contracts so you don't have to pay healthcare there, and moving the whole operation over to the UK so that they don't have to pay for healthcare. So instead of these companies lobbying this country for something like universal healthcare, which is something that people overwhelmingly support in this country, they would rather just do all of that and move across the ocean than just say, you know what? We should have that here. They have universal healthcare over there. It's done by the government, not given to people through their companies, which was always just like an insane thing. That is not a normal thing that Americans are just so used to, but that's where the majority of Americans get their healthcare from. And unfortunately, we have a lot more contract workers in the country these days because companies have figured out that they can bypass that. And to be fair, I don't necessarily blame companies for not wanting to pay those costs because it is expensive and it shouldn't necessarily be their responsibility. But that's why we advocate for things like healthcare coming from the government. And these companies, they get it to the point that they're willing to move to a country that does have those benefits. But instead they could just be like, hey, let's also have that here. And they have the money and they have the influence, but they choose not to wield it in any way that would actually benefit their own workers.
Yeah, the only people in competition with Wall Street for lowest IQ are mainstream media, who every once in a while will say like, oh, that's surprising. We would think that Disney would be more patriotic. They're amoral machines. We wrote a code saying maximize profit. They're gonna move out of the country the minute they think they can save 10 cents from it. They're gonna fire 25% or 40% of their workforce the minute they think they can save any money. They're not human. They don't have patriotism or any other feelings. And those non-humans are about to steamroll us. And it feels like no one in power has any idea what's coming. And like I said earlier, I'm super worried about it. All right, guys, we're gonna take a break here. We'll be right back. Wow. All right, members on TYT.com, Sina Hogaboom wrote, Cenk just said what I was writing. But that happens in reverse all the time too, where I go, I was just gonna say that. Okay, anyways, AKA Delaware Dragon says, Cenk, I don't watch TV, but I know loads of people who are over the age of 50 who do, and shocker, they don't all have brains that are slop. Many people watch BS and can discern that it is BS. A lot of people watch TV and read papers and online news sources. Please stop insulting people over the age of 50 by painting with such a broad brush. You are less insulting to the right-wing nut jobs who claim to have had an epiphany. So I'm glad you wrote that in, because for God's sake, guys, stop taking it personally. I'm telling you about broad trends, right? Are there people over 50 who watch TV and don't have slop for brain? Yeah, first of all, I watch TV from time to time. My dad's been over 50 for decades, watched TV, but could discern it. You guys, a lot of you are over 50. Of course I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the macro numbers. Under 50 generally watch online media and have been liberated. Over 50, the numbers are disastrous. They still think Israel's moral and doing self-defense and a lot of stuff. And does TV brainwash you? Yeah, it doesn't mean you're weak-minded. Like I got brainwashed by TV. They told me that that America was a shining city on a hill, and Ronald Reagan was the cowboy that made it happen. And I was a Republican for like a decade, no, more than a decade because of that. So it's not a personal insult, but I hear you, and I'm glad you gave me a chance to clarify by writing in. And Faye Scott Smith says, I'm more worried about fixing the roads in my own city. I'm voting for independence this time. Oh boy. Back on TYT, Cenk, Yaz, and Mark Mayhew. Mark, thanks for becoming a member. Now you're one of us. We love it and we appreciate it. Okay, everybody hit the join button or tyt.com/join. Okay, that way you get save a couple of months of annual membership, and you get to have a member stream where I read your comments. By the way, if you're already a member on YouTube, tyt.com/connect. That doesn't cost you any money. You already paid for it, and you can connect your two accounts. Okay, let's do this. So who's dumber, Tucker Carlson or Joe Kent? That's the question that Donald Trump is asking. Can I give a third option? Maybe the guy on the other side of the screen here, this way. Okay. So that's the question that he was asking. Joe Kent, of course, is former counterterrorism center director for Donald Trump. So weird that he would hire someone so low IQ. Did a long rant, and at the end of it, he said, "You're born that way, low IQ. And there's not a damn thing they're gonna be able to do about it." And I was like, man, that reads so much like a confession. Like it's constantly in his mind. Low IQ, nothing you could do about it. Nothing you could do about it. You were just born that way. We know, Donald, we know. Okay, so now let me give you a little bit longer version of that. Post-Truth Social. Who's dumber, he says, Tucker Carlson or Joe Kent? It's very interesting. I met Joe Kent at Dover Air Force Base along with numerous others who had lost their loved ones in war. I said hello to all the families. Kent horribly lost his wife. Her casket was being brought to Dover along with the rest, although he married again quite quickly, in my opinion. Okay, so he does this all the time. He did it with Tom Massey too. Their wives died. Have some dignity and decency, Jesus Christ, man, right? Now, to be fair, Donald Trump's wife, first wife, he's remarried many times, quickly, I would say, but his first wife, Ivana, also died. What happened with Ivana? Ivana Trump was buried near first hole of Trump National Golf Club. Her gravesite could offer a tax break for the business. So I see you're very respectful of ex-wives who have died, I got it. He continues, in any event, a number of years later, I noticed the same person was running for Congress in Washington State and lost. I then noticed a couple of years later, he was running again and lost. I do remember a guy losing in 2020 and crying about it for years and years and years. Oh, he's still crying about it. Oh, right, that was you, Donald. Then he continues, well, I didn't know him other than our brief Dover encounter, but feeling sorry for him after the 2 election losses, I told my people, hire him for the White House, give him a job, make him feel good. He lost his wife in 2 elections. They did so, and while I rarely saw him, I certainly didn't expect disloyalty, but that's what I got. So let me get this right. You hired our national counterterrorism director because you felt sorry for him because you thought he was a loser? That's not the win you think it is, okay? One more here, he said, he was really a sleazebag, and some would say on top of it all, a leaker. I don't know whether or not that was true, but apparently you said it anyway to the world. Okay, but next time, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Kent's a loser. Just like Tucker, Candace, Meghan, and the rest of them are losers. You're born that way, low IQ, and there's not a damn thing they're gonna be able to do about it. Again, yes, it feels so much like a confession. You're born a loser, there's nothing you can do about it. I feel like I could hear his dad telling him these things when he was a kid. What do you make of it?
No, I think you're missing something, Cenk. I think you're missing how benevolent Trump really is. He loves to employ losers out of his big heart. He also, it's weird how he also equates that, this man lost his wife and he also lost 2 elections because like, what a loser, you're just losing, you lost your wife, you lost elections, like, but here's a job anyway. Here's a very high profile job, no less. He also has such a weird obsession with IQ. And like, bro, can we get an IQ test from Donald Trump? Can we get a test from him right now? Can we see that dementia test? Can we see the actual results? Can we watch you take the test? Can we see your college transcripts? Like, you are not smart. Like, Trump is not smart. And I think Trump knows it. And you're right. I think that's his dad's voice in his head. Like, he just was never good enough. I think the only good thing that came out of Trump's weird childhood, as far as what we know, is that he doesn't drink alcohol because he's afraid of alcoholism. Like, good for you, but it still has not prevented your brain from turning to absolute mush. And I do think that if you're an evil person, like I do think that like part of that does start to like eat away at your soul and your brain. And I think that's why he is where he is today, because he's constantly having to lie, right? He's always like just like trying to reconcile things that make no sense. He's constantly lying is a lot of work, you know, like if you have to, if you're lying all the time to everybody, to an entire nation of people, to the world, really, that is a lot of work. That's a lot of pressure that you're taking on. I'm a really bad liar, and I'm grateful because like, who has the time? Who has the energy? He does, I guess.
Well, certainly Trump does. So look, this is all over the fact that Joe Kent said, don't start another war. And where did Joe Kent's wife die? In one of these needless wars in the Middle East. So he takes that as like, haha, you're a loser because you lost. No, because some a-hole like you sent them to go die for Israel. So Tucker Carlson's not going to take this line down, so he strikes back.
Is the president sending? Well, not a coherent one. Doesn't actually add up to a theology. It's mockery. He's mocking Jesus. He's making fun of Christianity. To a lot of Christians or people who know the Bible well and believe in it, these predictions in both the Old and the New Testament, and there are others, seem to fit what we were watching. Here's a leader who's mocking the gods of his ancestors, mocking the God of gods, and exalting himself above them. Could this be the Antichrist? Well, who knows? At least that's my conclusion. Who knows? We're also told repeatedly in the New Testament that you're not gonna know that Jesus will return like a thief in the night, and you better be ready because you can't predict it. But we're also told there are signs, and is this one of them? Well, again, unclear.
Damn, he just called him the Antichrist, maybe. So again, that's referring to his blasphemous message on Easter, his blasphemous message on annihilating whole civilizations. Pretty sure the Prince of Peace didn't agree with that. And then the blasphemous picture that he put out where he was Jesus, and then told us earlier in the show, but it's hilarious. Someone online has the theory that his advisors told him that the picture was, to say that the picture was doctored, and he thought he should say that, oh no, he was a doctor in that picture. But yeah, presenting yourself as Jesus or higher, I don't believe in any of the religion stuff, but I think that Tucker's right about the theology that that's what an Antichrist would do. So I don't believe any of that, but that's where we are, guys. And finally, I give Trump the last word. He says, it's easy. Tucker's a low IQ person, always easy to beat and highly overrated. So are Megyn Kelly, Candace, really dumb and mentally ill, and bankrupt Alex Jones, who's completely fried. There are others also. Then we have some that are very good, true MAGA all the way, and smart. I should do a list of good, bad, and somewhere in the middle. I know, because copying Jesus wasn't enough. Why don't you copy Santa while you're at it? Anyway, and wouldn't that be fascinating, he says. I'm making people of a list of people who are naughty and nice, and I'll check it twice. Okay, yeah, all right, Santa. All right, you know what's not high IQ? Burning all of your allies in media on your side. Because the other guys are already not on your side. Now you have almost no allies left, other than Israel. Good luck with that, Donald. All right, we're so out of time. Sorry, Yaz. Everybody check out Yaz on Rebel HQ. We got great shows coming up. I still have 2 interviews. Joel Payne from Move On. Bold new program to challenge Democratic incumbents. Love it. We're gonna talk about that. And then afterwards in the studio, they're both in the studio, Meta World Peace, former basketball player, NBA legend. So we come in and talk a little bit of politics. So we'll be right back.
I'm a double.
All right, back on the revolution. So we're gonna do two things here. We're gonna do an interview in a second that I think is really important. But first I wanna tell you about something that Brave New Films has put out. So run by Robert Greenwald, love these guys. They're constantly trying to fight for peace. So in this case, they're showing some of the damage that Israel has done to hospitals in specific. I'm gonna give you some facts about that in a minute. But what's interesting is the trend they're showing between Gaza, Lebanon, and Iran. So let's watch. So the part that got to me was when they showed the hospitals before the bombings. Perfectly modern, good-looking hospitals treating thousands of patients. And what are we doing here, man? So we're funding Israel, constantly bombing hospitals. So let me give you some of the stats there. In Iran, 338 hospital and health facilities have been bombed by the United States and Israel. There have been over 2,267 attacks on healthcare facilities in Gaza. That is a stunning number. In Lebanon, 77 health workers and patients have been killed and 177 injured. And that's in a brief period of time. The US spent $11.3 billion in the first 6 days of the Iran war alone, and $21.7 billion on military aid to Israel over the past 2 years. And of course, before that, we gave them $300 billion. Since then, Donald Trump has given them another $13 billion. I think that's plenty for a country that committed a genocide and is doing ethnic cleansing again in Lebanon and has driven us into a disastrous war in Iran. Enough is enough. Love the good people of Brave New Films. Thank you for continuing to try to make a difference. And we'll put that link in the description box so you can grab it and send it to family and friends as well, because we need to wake everybody up, because mainstream media is still pretending that Israel is doing self-defense. It's unconscionable that we're sending any of our money to that government to do these horrific acts. Okay, our interview is also related to that to some degree. So let's transition over to that. Joel Payne joins me in studio. He's Chief Communications Officer for Move On. And they've got a new program that Joel wants to tell us about. Joel, how you doing?
Hey, good to see you.
It's great to have you in the studio. Okay, so tell me about the program.
So we have this new program called Stop the Warhawks, and really, as you know, there's too many Democrats who are influenced by big money, really big MAGA-aligned money, and they want to continue this military-industrial complex, and they want to push war, whether it's the war that Donald Trump is waging in Iran. They want to elevate tensions. They want to invest in more war around the world, and we, our members, really understand that that is not what the American people want government to be doing. Certainly not what they want Democrats in Congress to be doing. And so what we're deciding to do is go hard at these Democrats in their primaries. The first one that we're really going after is Dan Goldman in the New York district that he represents. Brad Lander, who I'm sure you and your audience knows very well, we decided to endorse under the Stop the Warhawks plank. And it's because Goldman not only is supported by AIPAC, but has invested in defense contractors like Northrop Grumman. And we want to make sure that our members, who by the way represent about 100,000 voters in that district, turn out to say, you cannot silence our voice with your money.
Yeah, so for those of you who didn't follow the New York race, Brad Lander originally was running against Mamdani and Cuomo and everybody else in the New York mayoral race, but wound up being a very significant ally to Mamdani, and is totally for peace, and is not funded by AIPAC and the Israeli lobby. Sure. So that makes all sense. And Goldman was part of the mess in New York where they maneuvered to Jamal Bowman out, and put in others.
One of these corporate Democrats who really are more accountable to their donor base than they are to their voters. And one lesson we've gotten from our members, not just from the 2024 cycle, but from beyond, is you got to get those folks out of Congress. You got to get people who are accountable to us.
So MoveOn is one of the largest organizations on the left, but Joel, for the folks at home, they might not realize how significant this is, because in the past there was great hesitation in going after Democratic incumbents.
Yep.
That was considered verboten and kind of a third rail in Washington. So what changed to make you guys go, no, it's okay if it's incumbents, we're gonna go after them anyway?
This is an extraordinary moment. And I don't have to tell you that, I don't have to tell your audience that. And we cannot fall victim to the conventions of the past. We can't say, well, because they're in office and because they're an incumbent, we are gonna treat them as sacred. No, there's no one that's sacred. Democrats who do not listen to the base, who will not fight for the people who they represent at home, really are just as compromised as the Republicans that groups like ours do a really good job of calling out and exposing. And so if you are a Democrat and if you are going to allow yourself to be compromised by big money, big MAGA aligned money, by the way, Cenk. I mean, these are folks who are, card carrying supporters of Donald Trump and MAGA, folks like AIPAC who want Donald Trump to have more power, want him to have more of his way. Those folks have no business influencing Democratic primaries, and we're gonna call them out.
So is there any other groups that you would raise an alarm for you guys and maybe support a challenger against an incumbent, like defense contractors?
Yeah, defense contractors, AI companies, I mentioned AIPAC. These groups who, by the way, are invested in advancing war, advancing these harms. I mean, you showed that video about just the horror that's happening in Iran, the bombing of that girls' school, the hundreds of civilians who've been killed, the thousands more who've been injured, the US service members who've been sacrificed because of it. We cannot allow these big MAGA aligned corporate interests to keep pushing us into these wars. And we certainly can't allow them to do it by working their way through Democratic politicians who should be more accountable to their base.
So my sense, Joel, is that the base has moved significantly since 2024. And so you always had the progressive wing, and they were always in favor of peace and not sending more money. But even so, like the idea of not sending any more money to Israel was another third rail and unthinkable before 2022, et cetera, right? So even for Democrats, now 80% of Democratic voters say negative view of Israel, don't send any more money. But even more importantly, the non-Bernie voters, the ex-Hillary, Biden, et cetera voters have now begun to go, wait, I'm not sure Democratic leadership knows what they're doing. And I hadn't seen that before. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. So look, one of our jobs, we think at MoveOn, as an independent power base outside of the establishment of the Democratic Party, is to remind these Democrats of what their people sent them to Washington to do. They did not send them to Washington to do more of the same and to essentially advance Republican ideas and Republican foreign policy. You talked about the public opinion numbers on how much of the public has shifted on Israel. That's right. I mean, we just saw recently that 40 of the Senate Democrats, which is almost 80% of that caucus, blocked or voted to block arms sales to Israel. That's a lot of progress. There's more work to do to make sure that that money does not go towards waging more war. But those Democrats probably are more comfortable doing that now than they were, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because they know the base is with them. When we announced this campaign a few days ago, we put out a memo. We actually surveyed our members. There are over 90% of our members who would be more interested in signing up for a petition, more interested in taking an action if they found out that these war hawk companies were trying to play in their primaries. I mean, we found that to be very, very persuasive. So when you have 9 in 10 folks who are MoveOn members, who by the way represent a lot of the Democratic base, when they tell you they will be activated to stop this, that's something that Democratic lawmakers should pay attention to.
Yeah, so 2 things to pick up on there. First, 40 Democrats voting to not send any more bombs and weapons to Israel is stunning.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have never happened before. Not even because you wouldn't have found 4. I'm not sure you would have found 1.
Jake, I worked in Democratic politics, and we've talked about this before. I used to work for Harry Reid. I worked for Frank Lautenberg, Debbie Stabenow. I've worked in Democratic politics for 20 years. When I started in 2005, that type of number, unthinkable. And I think that that's a credit to the grassroots of the Democratic Party, the base of the Democratic Party standing up and saying, stop this, no more. And I think we are trying to give those folks more voice with our Stop the Warhawks campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, of course, we should know there were 7 Democrats who betrayed their voters and went with their donors instead. And I hope every one of them gets primaried. And in fact, we're going to try to find the person primarying Chris Coons and help them from the Young Turks perspective and TYT perspective, Rebellion PAC, my perspective, et cetera. And of course, the War Powers Act just found enough Democrats to pass. They always find just enough votes to pass. So it's not like we're in green pastures. But I want to get back to the other thing that you mentioned that's so different and important. So there's 2 freight trains, in my opinion, going 100 miles per hour, headed straight in each other's direction, right? The base has had enough. It's not close, and every number, right? So for example, on the issue of Israel, now this isn't even just Democrats, but the whole country, under 50 years old men now have, Israel's approval rating is -47. Just 4 years ago it was -3, now it's -47. It's unprecedented, right? 63% of Jewish Americans are opposed to the Israeli government. Support Israel, but are opposed to this government, right? So it's overwhelming, every category in every way, et cetera. So the people are speaking very loudly and clearly, do not fund Israel anymore. And now they're beginning to even wake up to the larger issue. It isn't about Israel, it's about money and politics, right? So the defense contractors have been buying these guys the whole time. Big Pharma has been buying them, now the crypto bros, AI guys, et cetera. So that's a freight train, and that freight train doesn't look like it's gonna budge. But the establishment always finds enough votes, right? And the establishment always supports the donors. And the DNC just had an opportunity to say, hey, we're not gonna have this dirty money, this dark money in our primaries, and they voted hell no, dark money all the way in the primaries. So what's gonna happen when these freight trains collide?
You know, I think that elected Democrats, we call them grass tops folks, right? Those are lagging indicators of where this is. I mean, look, I've heard Chuck Schumer on many occasions talk about how he thought that part of his job was to make sure that the Democratic Party remained loyal to the cause of Israel. And you were clear here, and I want to be clear here. No one is talking about the citizens of Israel. They obviously deserve to live in peace, et cetera. But so do the people of Gaza. So do Palestinians as well. And I think people are smart and perceptive enough to draw a distinction between the people of a country and the government of a country. And I think it's a failure of these establishment politicians on the Democratic and Republican side that they have not put enough of a check in the system to make sure that abuses of Israeli government support, abuses of this establishment support of this military-industrial complex did not go haywire and over the top. I mean, the reason why the public has gone to where they've gone to is because they know that the folks who are put in office to actually represent them have dropped the ball. They failed. The Chuck Schumers of the world have failed. The establishment politicians on the Democratic and Republican side have failed to hold, whether it's Israel and these other countries that want to wage war accountable. And so now the grassroots is taking the reins back, and that's what we want to power with this initiative. And I think going into 2026 and 2028, it's interesting. Of that 40. All of the hopefuls, all the people who are hoping to win a Democratic nomination in 2028, they got religion on this. They knew exactly where to be. I think that's an indicator of where this is going.
That's definitely true. I'll be much harsher than you, which is not surprising. That's kind of what I do. So for example, like Cory Booker doesn't mean it at all. Like he thinks he might run for president. He loves AIPAC, has taken tremendous money. He says his AIPAC's head is like his best friend and they giggle and all this stuff. If they needed his vote, they definitely would have gotten his vote. He's voted in the right way in this. I always take yes for an answer, but I mean, it's so shallow.
Can I say something to you though? My view on this is whether, like you always want the genuine ally, but if someone knows that they need to be on your side, that is just as powerful as someone who is actually on your side, because that tells you that they can count. that they can read the scoreboard and they understand where this is. So eventually you'll get those folks, I think, to be genuine allies. But we got to keep cracking at it, and we got to make sure that we platform our grassroots so that those folks can speak out and their voices are not washed out by all this big corporate money.
I'm going to ask you more questions about what you guys are doing and move on, but we got our first disagreement there, okay? And I'll tell you why. So I take yes for an answer. So I'm very happy that Booker and all the Adam Schiff and all the other guys voted in the right way here. But Joel, there is an issue, right? Because we didn't win the vote. Like if we win the vote, then bygones be bygones, right? So if you're playing cutesy political games and you vote the right way, but golly gee, we lost the vote. But hey, elect me as president because I'll do the right thing when I'm president. No, I just don't believe you, right? So no, it's you see the nuance there.
There's room for, by the way, both takes here. You need the people to hold people's feet to the fire and to say, no, that's not good enough, to not be a real ally. But you also need the political pressure that organizations like ours, that our members will provide so that these folks know that even if they haven't gotten to where they need to get to, we're gonna tell them they need to get there. So I take your point. The work of political pressure is to create the conditions so that they don't feel comfortable doing the status quo, same old thing they've always done.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. So let's talk more about what you guys do. So you got the Goldman race, and Brad Lander's the guy to back. So any other ones? How many are you guys thinking of doing? How broad is this?
Well, we look at the Goldman race as kind of a model of the type of races that we want to get involved in. We'll be over the next couple of weeks announcing a couple of more, whether it's races, whether it's intervening on politicians who are currently in office. And we're going to be doing everything from putting out petitions, doing kind of localized tactics, raising money for candidates who are with us on this, funding the type of grassroots advocacy to make the case and tell the story of why it's so important to stop these war hawks. So we'll be doing a multitude of tactics over the next couple of weeks and months. And what our hope is that we will help Democrats build the type of majority going into 2026 and 2027, in the 2026 midterms going into 2027, that can actually get the numbers that we need to get to. Get that number so we win the next war powers resolution vote. Get the number so that we win those weapon sales votes in the future.
So I want to get a sense of the depth of the change, because you guys are constantly polling your members, and you've got a ton of members.
Yeah.
So my guess is that 10 years ago for sure, but even 5 years ago, that if you guys had said, hey, we're gonna do a campaign against Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, that people would have taken your heads off and go, what? No, those are our beloved leaders. What are you doing? No, focus on the bad guys. Trump bad, right? Now, but we still think Trump's bad and terrible and all that. But now it feels like there's pressure from your members to do campaigns against the Schumers and the Democratic leaders. Otherwise, it feels like you're not doing enough. Do I sense that right?
I think you're cooking on that. I mean, look, we're in an existential moment. Like, we're in an existential moment as a movement, as those of us who believe that what Donald Trump and Republicans are pushing is anathema to what this country should be about, to what the free world, to all those who are supposed to be the ones who are trusted to keep the world out of these types of wars should be about. We're at an existential crisis moment. And when you're at that crisis moment, you cannot lean on the status quo and what you've always done. Yes, you're right. 5-10 years ago, these would probably be considered extreme, radical, over-the-top tactics. The fact that they're not, I think, shows you how the Overton window on this has moved, how the middle has moved on this. Our members were deflated coming out of 2024 because they, alongside of feeling so harmed by Donald Trump being in office, they also felt let down by the Democrats who were there to fight on their behalf. And one of our missions is to make sure that our members are platformed, that they're heard, and that they get the type of Congress that will actually fight for them. It's one of the reasons why we called on Chuck Schumer to step aside as leader late last year, because our members allowed us to call for Chuck Schumer to step aside. It's one of the reasons why we're doing this campaign, is because our members are here and we want to platform their voices.
Yeah, and now Ro Khanna is the first Democrat in Congress to say Schumer should step aside. Yeah. So, and that's exactly what we're talking about here, and what you've been saying the whole time. The people are leading.
That's right.
And now finally some of the Democratic politicians have started
Leadership
to follow.
is coming from the grassroots, it's coming from the states, it's not coming from the halls of Congress.
Yeah, and so last thing here, since Move On is such a giant organization, and I think it's really important and pivotal in DC, I think that you guys going in this direction is really important. It's not a small thing, because my sense of it, Joel, is that no, the establishment's not going to give an inch. Israel's never going to lose a vote. The defense contractors are never going to lose a vote. Or big oil, big pharma, none of them are ever going to lose a vote until we vote a lot of these guys out of office, right? So they respond to what gives them power. Right now, money gives them power. If money then costs them power, then all of a sudden they're going to rethink their relationship with money and the donor class that they serve so loyally. And my views on the Democratic Party overall are much lower than yours. But this is how you move people, right, Joel?
Yes, that's
and
right.
You make a bigger and bigger campaign. And so in a sense, what Move On is doing here is what Frederick Douglass talked about, that power does not concede without a demand. Never has, never will. So you're making a demand. Am I hearing that right?
That's exactly right. And look, these entrenched interests are not gonna, bow out without a fight. We know that. There's a reason why they're entrenched. There's a reason why they've been in power for so long. I think what we have to do is make it more painful to them, more painful for these interests to hold on to power in the way that they're holding on, and to not reform and not change and not step out of the way, than it is for them to hold on to power. I mean, think about the first 6 months of the Trump administration. Remember when Elon Musk went to Pennsylvania, or rather went to Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but specifically went to Wisconsin, tried to buy that Supreme Court seat? What overwhelmed that? It was big turnout. It was people saying, enough, I've had enough of it. It doesn't matter how much money you put on the airwaves. We are going to fight back, and we're gonna overwhelm your investment. The investment of people power is the only thing that's going to overwhelm the investment of big MAGA corporate moneyed interest. And that's what we're hoping to do with this campaign.
I couldn't agree more. And for the first time, I am seeing that army of people show up to vote with knowledge, with understanding. Just because they have a D next to their name doesn't mean that they support you. And by the way, that's what primaries are for. There's other Democrats that are running against them. Better Democrats that are more loyal to their voters rather than the donors. So I love that you're encouraging that. And look, if the Brad Lander defeats Dan Goldman, if Shortcut Chucker Party takes Nancy Pelosi's old seat, if AOC takes the New York Senate seat of Chuck Schumer, these are enormous developments.
Fighters in these positions, wherever, by the way, it doesn't necessarily matter if you are defining yourself as a moderate in tone or progressive in tone. I mean, yes, we want progressive fighters, but what matters most is that you fight, that you're connected to what the grassroots are saying, and that you represent the interest of where you're from. And by the way, I invite people to go to moveon.org to learn more about this. Go to moveon.org. If you check our website, you'll find the portal for Stop the Warhawks. Check it out. Feel free to sign a petition, chip in, help us out.
Yeah, absolutely. And last thing for me is, look, the policies are super important to me. Money out of politics, anti-war. We have a populistplank.com that is the 6 most important and most popular policies. We have super popular policies if we'd ever actually just pass them, right? But I totally agree with you. More important than even the policies is the fight.
That's exactly right. That's actually the thing that we have found. That's the thing that has moved our members and has also irritated our members the most. It's not necessarily people maybe having differences of opinion on policies, right? Like, there are a lot of ways that you can kind of get to where you need to get to in the policy front, but you have to be willing to fight. You can't be a bystander. You can't be compliant to what Donald Trump and what Republicans are doing. You have to be a live body. And also you have to be willing to fight these entrenched powered interests. And so that is the line that our members are drawing. And again, we're helping to platform them.
This is basically a Democratic civil war, but that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing, because our side, the voter side, has to win. And now, to your point, Joe, I can't stop talking about it, but it's because now it's beautiful to have our brothers and sisters that supported Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, et cetera, come to our side, not in terms of policies like you say, but in terms of let's challenge them, let's fight to actually have them represent us and not them. And that's a super important civil war to have.
Yeah, last thing I'll just say about this. Move On, by the way, is one of the convening organizations that has supported No Kings, right? We've had 3 successful No Kings rallies, more and more millions of people every single time. But so many of those people are not necessarily people who are gonna find Move On their own, or find Indivisible or 5051 or the other great organizations that are doing work. These are people who have been radicalized by Donald Trump's failure, Donald Trump's overreach, Donald Trump's complete abuse of power. That's what's radicalizing people. And it's people, by the way, who might have voted for Donald Trump in the past. They might have voted for Mitt Romney in the past. You'd be surprised at the folks that come to No Kings rallies, that sign Move On petitions now. We're seeing more and more of that. We need to normalize that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Most people might be surprised, but we thought that might happen. And why did we think that might happen? Because we knew Trump was gonna be a disaster, and we knew he was gonna disappoint people, and then he was gonna start wars. That's why we were against him.
We also know that's only one step in the process. Look, Donald Trump is proving himself to be a failure. That's part 1. Part 2, Democrats have to prove themselves worthy of the trust to win back power and to actually do something with power. And only the people can allow them that power.
100%. Joel Payne, Chief Communications Officer for Move On. Everybody check out moveon.org. Joel, we really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys, we're gonna take a little bit of break here. Meta's a little late, so we'll come back live for you guys probably in about half an hour. Meta World Peace in the studio, so fun little Friday treat for you guys. We'll see you then.